Hello, everyone, and welcome back to not only another day here at the Damage Report, but another week as well. A week where we're gonna do something kind of like what we did at the end of last week. We're gonna spend a bit of time with the evil stepsister dragon, Francesca Fiorentini. Francesca, welcome back to the show after such a brief break.
I know. I'm sorry. Slash, you're welcome for so much fantastic things.
So much.
Many,
so
okay.
Much.
It's early.
We had you on Friday, you got 5 minutes off, then you spent the whole day doing the Bituation Room, which I definitely check out, and now you're back.
Yes.
We're excited for it.
Yeah, me too. It's a new week.
It's a new week, a new day. But anyway, we do have a lot of news. We're coming out of the weekend with a bunch. Biden's strong stance last week, is it worth a damn? We'll find out. AOC chimes in on a couple different things that are going on. We lose a former senator. We're gonna take a look back at his life, and then a whole bunch of stuff. The kids are socialists, and we're gonna get to a bunch of different stuff. But before we jump into all that news, I wanted to let you know about a couple things. One, over the weekend, the Bituation Room happened. It wasn't the only thing happening. You know what else happened? Jordan Ewell, who streams for Deep Dive on Twitch for TYT, he held another one of his donate and drop fundraisers. In this case, it was to raise money for healthcare for the homeless. Basically, it was a marathon 2-day stream of playing Fortnite with a bunch of different people to raise money, and he raised over $25,000, which seems pretty awesome. I got to play for a couple of hours with Brett and Brooke, who I'm sure all of you are familiar with. We had a lot of fun. We hit the 25,000 mark, so supposedly Jordan is going to be getting a Fortnite themed tattoo. We don't know where yet. We have different places we're rooting for, but it is coming.
It's worth a donation.
To get that tattoo.
Oh yeah.
So anyway, that was fun. And also wanted to let you know, a place where perhaps, I don't know for sure, I'm not saying this is gonna happen, but maybe you can see Dr. Rashad Ritchie get a tattoo on Indisputable after this program today. No, he's not gonna do that. But what he is gonna do is have as a guest Chuck Rocha, who we've had on many times on the show. Had a lot of fun with Chuck. He's gonna come on and talk about some politics with Rashad. Charles F. Coleman is gonna be the co-host. And I believe he's co-hosting on our show tomorrow, actually. So you're gonna see a lot of him coming up soon. And conservative Major Williams, candidate in California's governor's race. They'll be having a little talk, perhaps a little debate. Should be a lot of fun. That's Indisputable coming up right after the Damage Report today. But before that, the Damage Report. So Francesca, why don't we Damage Report together? Let's do it. Let's do it. Last week we found out about the bipartisan infrastructure deal, but don't worry, it's lame. We all know it's lame, but it's not all that's coming. They're gonna do all this great stuff via reconciliation. And Nancy Pelosi said, we're not doing one unless we do both. And Biden was like, I'm not signing one unless we get both. And then Republicans pretended to be like super surprised by this process. What do you mean you'll have another bill? Who do you think you are? The controlling majority in all of these branches of government? And they knew about it. They knew about it for months, but they whined and they kicked up some dust and everything. And so let's run through that and then the sort of natural consequence of that. So on Thursday, shortly after Biden triumphantly announced the Democrats and Republicans had reached an agreement on a $973 billion package, far smaller than the one he had initially promised, he said he would only sign it in tandem with his American Families Plan, a separate bill that includes spending on items Democrats have argued are also critical infrastructure, such as childcare and clean energy investments. And he said, like as if we could quote him someday, if this is the only thing that comes to me, I'm not signing it. It's in tandem. If it's the only thing that comes to me, I'm not signing it, which seems kind of clear briefly. But on Saturday, Biden walked back his remarks somewhat, saying he had not intended to issue a veto threat and that he intended to support the infrastructure plan without reservation or hesitation, saying, our bipartisan agreement, Jack, does not preclude Republicans from attempting to defeat my family's plan. Likewise, they should have no objections to my devoted efforts to pass that family's plan and other proposals in tandem. We will let the American people and the Congress decide. The bottom line is this: I gave my word to support the infrastructure plan, and that's what I intend to do. I fully stand behind it without reservation or hesitation, which seems a far cry from, if this is the only thing that comes to me, I'm not signing it. Francesca, what do you think?
I mean, I think more importantly is the reaction from Republicans. We're like, yes, that is right. That way we don't actually have to support the rest of this bill. That's what we wanted to hear. Like, they're all happy because they've got the president right where they want him, even though, yeah, they're in the minority. Like, we elected somehow Joe Biden out of that slate of candidates. Joe Biden's the president, okay? Mitch McConnell, Mitt Romney, Joe Manchin, not the president. All right, like, this is what I don't get.
We
like,
checked.
We checked. Yeah. Sadly, like, so anyway, but yes, of course he's gonna cave. Of course he's gonna say this. Of course he's going to have a strong stance. And just when progressives are like, ooh, fighting, he's like, no, I'm not gonna fight. I'm totally gonna sign it. And then, they'll just issue me a little IOU of how, they're gonna support the family's plan down the road. But again, we talked about this on Friday. There's a big lapse of months in between, when potentially this bipartisan bill would get passed, if it even does, and when an infrastructure package would be included in some kind of budget reconciliation situation. I don't know, I think they call it a situation. And within that time, again, how many lobbyists are gonna be coming to the feeding frenzy? How many, I don't know, Dianne Feinstein is gonna lose even more of her marbles. Anything could happen.
That is true. That's the thing that could happen in particular. It's a lot of time. But the thing, like, okay, it's not like last week we were like, yes, we got it. And we're gonna have the other one. We're gonna have both, like peanut butter and jelly. But like, if peanut butter's kind of like terrible, but like jelly masks it or whatever. Yes. I mean, we're a little bit worried about like somebody screwing us over in months, but right now we're good. Now is our time to shine. We thought it might take a while, not like the next day. He's like, oh, that thing I said about only signing one. Who was that? I don't know that guy, Jack. Come on, that was malarkey. No, you were very clear. Except you've also been clear throughout your career, which is why we shouldn't have put much faith in it. So anyway, what I do trust in that statement he made is this: we will let the American people and the Congress decide. I mean, he doesn't mean that literally. After all, they did. The American people decided. Somehow, I want Biden. Give me some Joe. And you know what? A Democratic Congress too. Let's get one of them. And then, oh wait, they're gonna need the Senate to do this? Let's do it. Wait, it has to come through Georgia? You need you need 2 Democratic senators in Georgia?
We'll give you them. Yeah.
We'll give you those. The American people decided and decided and decided. They can't decide anymore. But what he really means there is, like, you guys, these Republicans are like really being mean to me. Like, I need you to be at least as mean, or I'm gonna fold on this thing. I think that's what he's really saying.
Yeah, it is so specifically pathetic. It is so pathetic. Especially we're talking in, this is like 6 months of the presidency. In the first 6 months, to not even be able to like stand behind the idea that after all this work that you did to so-called deliver bipartisanship, look at you, you thread this needle and you can't even stand alongside your own decision to say no. Republicans, you gotta go along with the family's plan. And Democrats, you gotta go along with a crappier infrastructure plan, but we're gonna get to it later. Like, that's okay, cool. You've established your position. That's fine. It's not one I would have. It's not one I necessarily support, but it's one that he carved out for himself. And now to say, no, I'm not saying I would veto it or wouldn't sign it, right? Then that is a complete walk back of something you fought so hard to stake out. Makes no sense.
And what if that's not even true? There's additional wrinkles coming at you, America. So Biden spent the weekend backtracking on his "I will veto the bipartisan infrastructure bill if that's the only one that comes." But will he actually? We'll get to that in 1 second. At least briefly, though, Republicans quite happy to hear that he is folding, even though he got the White House and they got the Senate and they got the House. Mitt Romney said, "I do trust the president." And he made very clear in the much larger statement that came out over the weekend, carefully crafted and thought through piece by piece, that if the infrastructure bill reaches his desk and it comes alone, he will sign it. That's Senator Mitt Romney very much speaking like a human would. So he now has faith. Rob Portman, senator, said, "We were all blindsided by the comments the previous day, which were that these two bills were connected." They've been talking about that for literally like 2 months. And I'm glad they've now been delinked. And it's very clear that we can move forward with a bipartisan bill that's broadly popular, not just among members of Congress, but the American people. So they're very happy about that. So like, I think, look, it's only fair, they should be delinked. So we took everything we didn't like out of the bipartisan bill, and we've at least implied we won't filibuster it. Now it's delinked from that other one that now includes all the stuff we didn't like. Who's to say whether we'll filibuster it or not? I don't know where to put my money. So yeah, like, and Biden is fully aware of this. The Democrats are fully aware of that. Nancy Pelosi, who so far hasn't backtracked, is fully aware of this. So if they delink it, they know exactly what that means. What that means is maybe you get the bipartisan one, but you 100% put every cent you have on it. Do not get the reconciliation bill. That seems fairly clear. We will see. Especially when you don't even have all 50 Democrats in the Senate having signed on to that. We have no idea if Joe Manchin would support literally any of this. So I don't know, Francesca, like Rob Portman, Mitt Romney, are they locked down now, or is there a chance that they could end up filibustering this thing too?
Oh, I put it past no Republican to suddenly get on a higher horse to squeeze their chest together for the donors. I'm sorry, that's just where my mind's at. I'm just like,
I don't even know what image you're conveying there, but I don't like it.
Okay, here's the thing. When Republicans are happy, we should be very, 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 very worried. And the other thing about Joe Manchin is, and he said, he's like, okay, yeah, budget reconciliation, but I'm not for, like $4 or $5 trillion. I'm not for Bernie Sanders' plan. Well, what's your number, Joe? Like, what's your number? Maybe it's $500 billion. Maybe it's $300 billion. Maybe it doesn't even reach $1 trillion, right? So we don't even know with Kristen Sinema and Joe Manchin how much they would be willing to go along with. And dare I even mention the Senate budget or the Senate parliamentarian, wherever that person stands on any of this, because remember, our fates are in their hands as well.
That's true. Can I piggyback on what you said about what his number is? Well, we don't know exactly. Obviously, a number only means as much as what is actually in that number. But you might recall on January 19th of this year when Senator Joe Manchin called for up to $4 trillion in infrastructure spending. And when that came out, I was like, no, there's no chance he actually means that, because he said that, got all the headlines like, oh, Joe Biden's infrastructure plan, that's tiny, I want a bigger one. He has never reiterated that since then. So we'll see. Now all of a sudden, a couple $1 trillion is too much. Like, we don't know what his final number is going to be. But like I said, there's a little bit of nuance here, and that is this. On CNN's State of the Union, White House advisor Cedric Richmond repeatedly avoided directly answering whether Biden would sign the bipartisan infrastructure bill if it landed on his desk alone, saying, quote, "I don't think it's a yes or no question." Well, no, it definitely is a yes or no question. You clearly don't want to answer it, whether because you're worried about scaring the left or you're worried about scaring people like Rob Portman and Mitt Romney. But it definitely is a yes or no question. Are they linked? Are they delinked? Those are two very different situations there. He was super clear that they were linked. Now he's trying to make it seem pretty clear that they're not linked. But now you're saying, who's to say, words are social constructs. Are they linked or not? I feel like if we're gonna wait the next 3 months before a final vote, we should at least have some idea of what's gonna happen during that time. But Francesca, I'm gonna throw one more thing out there. And that is that they're obviously worried about Republicans not supporting this, the 10 Republicans that they need. But bear in mind, there are some Democrats that are not happy with the way this is going. Bernie Sanders reiterated yesterday, I believe this was, yes, saying, let me be clear, there will not be a bipartisan infrastructure deal without a reconciliation bill that substantially improves the lives of working families and combats the existential threat of climate change. No reconciliation bill, no deal. We need transformative change now. So he's trying to be pretty clear there too. I am inclined to trust him more. We'll see what happens over the next 3 months. But Rob Portman deciding he's not going to vote for this is not the only thing that Biden needs to worry about. Any final thoughts?
I mean, that sort of seems to me like it hints that maybe there is a progressive bloc. And I know that the Congressional Progressive Caucus has been, very vocal about this and making sure that there is a budget reconciliation deal along with the infrastructure bill, but maybe that they'll withhold their votes. And I would say that if Republicans are threatening to withhold their votes, and the Joe Manchins and the Kristen Sinemas who are standing next to the president with this infrastructure bill just beaming like, oh, look, he chose us, oh my God, even though we're the worst people. Then progressives should as well, then, because I'm not convinced, and I hate to say this, I think that if none of this passes, it would be bad. I don't think it would mean that all of this is dead, if that makes sense. It would be, I'm not gonna, again, I think that some deal is better than absolutely nothing, but I also don't feel like none of this stuff could get passed ever again. Like this is our only chance, which is how everyone sort of makes it seem, especially those who have the most to stand to gain. And I don't mean the American people, I mean politicians and their donors.
Yeah. We'll see, yeah, I agree. I'm not expecting everything, but I am saying that the bipartisan bill is very much not everything. So hopefully Bernie is right. Hopefully Bernie has others that are willing to back him up. I don't know if anyone else is in that block. I suspect that they're not, but who knows? I haven't seen Elizabeth Warren or Merkley or a few others. We'll see what they think. In any event, we do have to take our first break, but when we come back, we're gonna talk a little bit more about some of the politics of this, including on the filibuster after this. Welcome back, everyone. Let's see what's going on out there. Seth Derby says, luckily my part of Colorado is missing the heat wave. It's actually unseasonably cool here. Went to MI a few days ago. The humidity was real. Yeah, so in the pre-show, Francesca, we were talking about the insane heat wave. I don't know if you saw, but like Seattle and Portland are gonna have like their highest ever recorded temperatures.
They did.
That's cool. That's insanity.
I remember
climate change hotter than it should be.
No, climate change was always, the Pacific Northwest was like, yeah, I don't know, it's gonna be kind of nice up here. It's gonna be sunnier. It's been really rainy for forever.
Yeah.
And now it is not okay. It is too hot there. I don't know, it's hotter than it was in Southern California. And I was like, oh, damn.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit hot here and God only knows what it's gonna be like in August, but yeah, I know some areas, like someone in the pre-show was like, Florida is better than it normally is. Okay, that's good. But yeah, it's devastating all around. So yeah, rough times ahead. Freya Dragon said, if on the odd chance Trump did go to prison, what would happen with his Secret Service detail? I think he still has it. I don't know exactly what the mechanics of that are. I would say though, other than if you are a big fan of hypotheticals, I would not invest a single ounce of your spirit into the idea that Trump is gonna ever spend a day in prison. It's just, there's no justice in this world. Certainly not justice like that, not that explicit. Maybe he'll lose a bunch of money or something. Maybe he'll be locked up in court cases the rest of his life. Maybe the Filet-O fish will catch up to him, but he's not going to prison, I don't think.
No, especially because this country would be like, but this is America. It's like, yeah, you elected a celebrity idiot to run your country. Yeah, well, we can't send anyone to prison. Yeah, but he's a criminal. No, we can't, because best country in the world. That's why. That's literally why we can't, because Democrats would never get on board with that. Anywho.
Yeah. Rob Shively, hey Rob, says, I don't like calling you evil, Step Dragon. You're one of the good guys, but if you take over for John again, you might be the dragon's sitter. Love ya. You know what? I like that name so much that I think I should schedule another week off just to try it out and see how we like that nickname. Yeah,
the dragon sitter.
That's pretty good.
How about the stepmother of dragons?
Oh, that's not bad.
Stepmother, okay.
Forrest Dudley says, I remember the proverb about a kingdom falling for want of a nail. Pretty sure that nail represents infrastructure. Well, certainly a lot of them. I mean, we've got buildings collapsing. And every day that our bridges don't, it's like kind of a mini miracle. I don't think we talk about it, perhaps so as not to jinx it. But yeah. Philip Easley says, nothing will fundamentally change, remember. Yeah. Trista says, y'all thought I was going to abandon my corporate overlords? Come on, man, if you believe that, you ain't black. I think that's supposed to be Biden, his brand of malarkey, yes. Oh God, some of his quotes. Anyway, over on Twitch, Mother Effin' Woman Dragon gifted a tier 1 sub. Thank you very much for that, appreciate that. By Felicia, subscribed for 2 months. Thank you for coming in for your second month. Tay for 2 months as well. So says, so happy I finally joined. It feels more like a hang ace. I love all the extra content. Keep up the good work, John, and the rest of the TYT team. Thank you, very nice of you. Skip the D Block Dragon, I cannot believe that that's a name. Gifted 5 tier 1 subs. Thank you, Skip the D Block Dragon. I do appreciate that. And BC Trumpet gifted 10 as well. I think that we had a hype train. I don't see it in the thing, but I'm pretty sure there was a hype train at some point. Anyway, okay, let's see. Melissa the Defender Dragon gifted 5 tier 1 subs. Shoegaze Dragon Georgie gifted 1. Thank you to both of you. Oh God, there's a lot more going on Twitch. We will get to some of it during our next break, but yeah, okay, more news, then we'll be back. That was smooth, definitely nailed it. Anyway, we got a lot more news to get to, Francesca, you ready for this? Okay, let's do it. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was on with Chuck Todd, because that's a thing you apparently have to do. And she was asked about Kirsten Sinema's argument against the filibuster, that it's important to have it, because if you don't have it, then sure, you'll pass legislation, but then the other party will just come into power and they'll reverse it, and then you'll reverse their reversal, and so on and so on. Is that a reason to get rid of the filibuster, or to keep the filibuster, I should say? Here's what AOC had to say.
It's essentially an argument of saying, well, why do anything at all in case something in the future may change it? Political systems all across the country, I mean, all across the world, pass legislation with majorities and they're fine. And frankly, here's the thing, is that Democratic legislation, once enacted, is popular. Republicans have tried to gut Social Security. They've tried to reverse the ACA. They've tried to claw back on legislation that has passed by simple majorities in the Senate. And they haven't been able to, because Democratic policies are popular. And once they are enacted, they are very politically difficult to undo. And so, I do not believe in the defeatism of saying we will lose in the future, and this will automatically mean that anything we do now is going to be reversed, so we might as well not do anything now. Our job is to legislate. Our job is to help people. Our job is to do as much as we can. And even if that's the case, even if that is the case, wouldn't it be better to get people healthcare and voting rights for 3 years instead of 0 years? Even if you concede the point that I don't even think is true in the first place.
Okay, AOC is making some great points there. They would occasionally cut to a wide shot and you'd see Chuck Todd just desperately trying to get in to derail it with some BS, but she persevered and got in some good points, Francesca. What do you think about that? Was there anything to Sinema's argument?
No, and I think this is an argument that not just, somehow Sinema's already a Republican in my mind. Maybe I'm like foreshadowing for what she will become, but it is very much a centrist line, and you hear it parroted in the media all the time. Sort of this warning about the filibuster that, oh no, but if we change the filibuster, it's gonna come back to bite us in the end. And it's like, so we'll have enshrined voting rights, and we will have lowered the age of Medicare, to 60. Like, people will not die. There's a lot of things that can happen between now and whenever you're worried that like the Senate is going to change again, right? Or whenever you're worried that like Biden won't be reelected or whatever it is. Like, she's absolutely 100% right in both accounts, right? And she goes on to say essentially that the filibuster, that there's already a filibuster in the Senate because of how undemocratic and how unrepresentative the Senate is by its very nature. We've talked about this before. Yes. And I've even floated the idea like you should just skew, like if you're gonna keep the filibuster, then skew the Senate so there's more Democrats, since they literally represent however millions of more people. Something like tens of millions more people, right? So I'm glad that she's pointing out the structurally undemocratic things of this country. Last thing on Sinema has said in the same breath that she defends the filibuster, she says, the Senate is not the most functional place in the country. I think we all agree, it's got some hangups. It's like, but we need to support the filibuster. Like, what are you saying?
That's the hangup.
The Senate is literally, yes, dysfunctional because of the filibuster. So we further enshrine it? No, you're insane. You're just saying word salad over and over again so you can appeal to whomever, whatever dark money groups are backing you in your next election bid.
Yeah, 100%. And of course, like, I think AOC could have mentioned this. I'm not surprised that she didn't. Everything that Sinema said there, BS, not just BS because it's wrong, as AOC pointed out, BS in that she doesn't care about it. Like she's making arguments that she does not care about, which is sort of like the trendy thing in politics and in media these days. Just say the stuff that you're supposed to say to continue to have the people who fund you like you. You don't have to mean any of it. You don't, and that makes so much of what we want to try to do pointless. Because we want to rebut, we want to argue, we want to try to persuade, but you can't do that if they're not making arguments that they actually care about. You can't change someone's mind if it's not reflective of their actual mind. She doesn't care about this. She's just not interested in the government actually accomplishing anything. But if she were to be honest, then she would know that this is a recipe for sort of exactly what AOC was pointing out, not accomplishing anything. The Republicans are not waiting for a more bipartisan bill. They don't care to do anything.
Yeah.
And so you would just not do anything. And think about that. Like imagine, why is she not 1% as scared of spending the next couple of years accomplishing literally nothing as she is of accomplishing something and then having the Republicans reverse it? Because I personally think if you are worried about Republicans getting in office, doing literally nothing is a weird way to ward that off. Yep. What you could do is pass popular legislation, which this is, make the Republicans stand against it, probably not successfully without a filibuster, but make them make the case. And if the American people do agree with the Republicans, then they'll vote them in. After the Democrats do a bunch of popular stuff, then somehow the Republicans get back into office, and then make the Republicans do unpopular stuff to reverse it.
Yes.
Actually have this debate, because the behind closed doors fake bipartisan debate, people don't know about that. All they know is the promises that were made by politicians.
Yes.
And Biden is at least ostensibly trying to make good on those promises. Actually do that. That's how a government is supposed to function. She's just avoiding, let's just not do anything for literally years. Let's just not do a single thing. Now that said, really fast, I want to throw a little bit more of AOC because she has a second point, and then I want to give you a chance to jump in. Here's AOC's point about why not just go further with what Sinema is saying.
Beyond that, then the argument is, okay, why 60 votes? Right. Why not stop at 70 votes? Why not need 80 votes to pass any legislation? Why defend a 60-vote filibuster when the Senate already amplifies minority power so that the 50 Democratic senators already represent millions and millions and millions more Americans than 50 Republican senators? And so I would argue that 50 Republican senators is already a built-in kind of filibuster-esque firewall.
Yeah, it is already. And why 60? Literally, why 60 rather than 61 or 59? It's not in the Constitution. It's not even the number that it's always been. It's certainly not the number now for things like bills that can get through via reconciliation or nominating and confirming judges.
Yeah.
So you can change it. They have changed it. Why are you so wedded specifically to 60? Why does that produce more bipartisanship than 65 or 55 or 51 or whatever? But again, it's a good point. It's logical. It makes sense. And it's completely beside the point and irrelevant because Sinema doesn't believe literally any of this.
Yeah, and I think, look, I am not someone who believes that Democrats are paid to lose and blah, 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 blah. But when you look at Kristen Sinema, man, that argument makes sense. Because if you think about it, what's it to her if Trump gets reelected? What's it to her if Tucker Carlson becomes president? She's gonna fundraise even more. Why?
Probably.
Because she's not a fascist. Oh, hey, vote for me again because I believe in LGBTQ rights and I believe that in like minimal criminal justice reform, or I believe I don't know that gravity exists, like the basic things. And she can raise tons of money if you've got a fascist Republican in office. But when there's a Democrat, ooh, and you actually have to do stuff, like enshrining voting rights or like, helping people get healthcare, then all my like pharma donors, climate change, gosh, my fossil fuel donors, oh no. Amazon, you wanna rein in big tech? See, Amazon's a big donor because I'm in Arizona. That's where they funnel all their money through. Not gonna do that. But a Republican comes in office? Yes. Amazon's gonna give me so much money because of that.
Yeah, and I understand like everything that Francesca's saying there, I think is 100% right. And it is true of far too many politicians, especially on the Democratic side. Don't fall into the easy, cheap, shallow like apathy of, and thus it must be true of literally every politician, which it is very much not.
No, because you see,
like
I'm sorry.
To that, a purity to that.
No. You see AOC just being not that politician, right? She's called out Manchin directly. Now she's asked to reply to Sinema, and she's like, no, you know what? I'm gonna say it. So no, this is not about all Democrats at all, especially now that I think we've got an upstart of really wonderful Democrats. But it definitely is true of some of these centrists and moderates.
Yeah. Well, with that, let's switch it up. This is just fun for me. Sorry, I apologize. It's fun for me, and at least until they pull me off this chair, I get to put stuff on the rundown. So during the weekend's Donald Trump speech, Donald Trump said stuff, but I don't know what it is, and we're not gonna show it to you. That said, there was something that I saw going around, and it was this really cheap, weird attack from Marjorie Greene against Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Here's what she had to say.
Led by AOC, the little communist from New York City. That's right. Yeah, lock her up too. That's a good idea. She's not an American. She really doesn't embrace our American ways. You want to know why? She has something called the Green New Deal.
Ugh. Anyway, there was a lot there that we will respond to, but I want to give you Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's response, which was thankfully brief. I think it's okay to respond. I don't think that she should dwell too much on it. Well, we'll talk more about that. She said, first of all, I'm taller than her. I just love it so much. Like, after all the ridiculous, the little communist from New York City, like it's so weird, and like she's trying to do the Trump thing of the little. But anyway, it was fact checked. AOC is apparently 5'4", Green is 5'3", so they're both shorties or whatever. But AOC is a little bit taller, so
no, that's my favorite part. Is
them.
They are both short, and it's very cute to have them being like, an inch matters, damn it. I saw you wearing heels, girl. I saw you. Like, that's very funny. And then of course, Marjorie Taylor Greene responds like, "You're still a communist," because she admits it. Like,
just like
Marjorie, you could just lie. You could just be like, no, I'm also 5'4". Whatever, you know what I mean? Like, but she instead was like, okay, fine, but you're still communist.
No, but I love the limits to her willingness to deceive. So she'll wear like a mask that says Trump won, but height, some things are still sacred. Yeah. She's not gonna lie about that. Well, but the issue is that we at some point, well, hopefully not, but we might see them standing next to each other. So it doesn't actually work. But I love that AOC only responded to that one portion of it because she's a little, like the thing about Marjorie Greene is I want better foes. Like just going up on there and saying, yes, "Oh, that little communist from New York City," it's just so cheap. It's so entry level. It's so like there's no nuance, there's no stagecraft, there's just nothing to it. She's a little communist. It's what, I guess in some ways, maybe it's better that this is what Republicans have been saying about Democrats for years and years. At least Green didn't say that she's, tearing kids' faces off in a basement and drinking their adrenochrome or whatever it is. I guess it's better in that way. What I don't like though is when she pivots to she isn't really an American. Why is that? I think we know. I think we know about what AOC is that makes her not an American there. But anyway, I want to briefly turn to this. And the question is, we decided that we would cover very briefly the attack against AOC from Marjorie Greene and her response, and acknowledging that she did respond. Now, responding can come in a lot of different forms. In this case, she just made fun of the fact that she's actually taller than Marjorie Greene. Marjorie Greene wants her to actually debate her on what, who knows? I don't think Marjorie Greene even knows, but she certainly wants to stand next to AOC when the cameras are rolling. The question is, what is the proper strategy here? Should AOC just let Marjorie Greene attack her and attack her and attack her? She's previously said that she wants to stand up to her just to show that she's not going to let a racist white politician try to demonize through vitriol women of color in politics. I wanted to read just two short excerpts from Elie Mystal's recent article in The Nation, because he gets into this and I sort of agree with his take on it. And Fran, I want to see what you think about it. He said, he acknowledged that it was fine for her to tweet what she did, but then he says, wrestling with Greene does Ocasio-Cortez no good since it only elevates Greene, even if Ocasio-Cortez is only lifting her up to throw her in the trash. Secondly, Greene has no policy platform to debate, while Ocasio-Cortez has an actual agenda to defend the Green New Deal, Medicare for All, and many other positions. Greene is a conspiracy theory made flesh who is only able to string together 2 sentences in support of guns, chin-ups, and racism. You can't debate that, you can only wipe it off your shoes. MTG is not the right-wing version of AOC, despite her own best efforts to set herself up as AOC's nemesis. She does not have a coherent policy agenda like AOC does. She hasn't brought new voters into the political process like AOC has. And she's not as influential within her own party as AOC has become. The only things MTG is good at are being white and a jerk. What do you think? What should AOC have even done what she did with the tweet? Should she go further? What should she do? What shouldn't she?
I think the tweet was good and warranted. And here's my thing about debating or not debating. Obviously, AOC would wipe the floor 10 times over with Marjorie Taylor Greene, and it would be a good platform potentially to really talk about what a Green New Deal is to supporters who might like Marjorie Taylor Greene and have their minds change, maybe 1 or 2. But we know that's not what would happen, right? What would happen is the right would cut up their, version of the debate. It would be like Marjorie Taylor Greene slays, destroys, blah, and it would just be edited by, Andy, whatever the hell that dude's name is.
I don't even.
Just no. I'm gonna call it no. No, but and it would be edited and it would be like completely chewed up and spit out by the spin machine. And so there's that. The real thing for me though is that the way that Marjorie Taylor Greene has been going about trying to get AOC to debate her is a classic right-wing troll tactic. We've seen it online all of the time, right? It is debate me on my show, debate me, give me the clicks, debate me. That's all it is. That's what the right knows how to do. And not only that, debate me or you're a shill, debate me or you're terrible. We might also be talking about some lefties. Debate me or like. And that is fundamentally disrespectful. If she hadn't been stalking her in Congress, following her around, like approaching her after meetings and like yelling in her face, I would say, yeah, maybe if it was like a formal letter, if it was like, hey, let's have a town hall, if there was something like anything formal about it. But it's not. It's been trash talking and it's been baiting. And I don't think you validate that with a debate.
Yeah. 100%. And the thing is, like, I think that most of these debates are absolutely pointless. But I do differentiate that there are some people who are doing something that I consider largely pointless for reasons that I think are admirable. They want to convince people, and I acknowledge that there are some people, a very narrow swath who can be persuaded. I just think it's nothing like what we think of when we think of debate. But then there are the others that know that, like for instance, you're talking about right-wing media and sometimes not just right-wing media. Actually doing a show where you talk about what's really going on is both more work and not necessarily as sexy as I'm in a feud. And that's why they want to do it largely. That's why Marjorie Greene wants to do it. And that's not like AOC doesn't need that and doesn't want that. So I think so far she has done it the right way. She'll respond briefly to the attacks. She doesn't elevate her. She doesn't delve into the substance of the attacks as if it's there. I guess whether she's a communist or not. I think that that's probably a good road to go down. Yeah. But that said, this debate stuff is popular. So I have a compromise. I think that AOC should agree to debate her, and then Marjorie Greene walks out. And then it's Sam Seder. Sam Seder walks out. It's not AOC. Now that I could watch. Oh, it's Sam Seder.
Oh, what an epic nightmare.
And by the way, a great, I think, just example of what you're talking about there, about the cutting up or whatever. Like, Crowder did run. He ran. And how many of his people did it convince that he's fake, that he's a coward, that he doesn't actually mean any of the debate stuff? I'm sure that there's a couple anecdotally. But he ran in as embarrassing a fashion as I've literally ever seen in one of these debates. And even that, I don't know how many people that's actually convinced. It's gotten lefties fired up. I like the memes, they're funny, and the songs and all that. Like, it's good for us. That's the sort of tribal thing that it does. But in terms of actually persuading people, has it? I hope so, but I don't know that I necessarily believe it has. Now that said, very briefly, let's get into this. Marjorie Greene would have you believe. Oh no! We're gonna do this brief thing and then we're gonna debate and then we're gonna come back to that. That's obviously more important, and we will get to it, former senator. Anyway, Marjorie Greene would have you believe that she's the same as AOC. They have a platform, but do they really? I'll show you what they have because she showed us when she went on Steve Bannon's podcast. So she accused Democrats of trying to separate America by identity group, whether it's transgenders, blacks, Hispanics. After Steve Bannon asked her about the war on women, this is what she had to say. They want everybody to be a victim, and then they need them to be dependent on the Democrats and their policies and their plans and goals in order to be able to survive. Now we have the Democrat Party that claims to be the champion for women. They claim that abortion is pregnancy rights, but instead that's killing a baby in a woman's womb. It's actually the worst scar a woman can carry for the rest of her life. Their war on women has gone beyond anything we can possibly understand. They are putting men, these are men, and I say they are playing dress up, and I'm not trying to offend anyone, but they are literally having an identity crisis. They are dressing up like women. And then they want to be recognized as a woman, which they are not. They never will be, and I refuse to recognize them that way. So that's just dumb person transphobia. That's all it is. And it's like the you're a little communist thing. So like you're the next big thing for the right. Obviously, you're gonna be against reproductive rights. You're gonna give the best argument against it. Their best argument is, they claim that abortion is pregnancy rights, but instead that's killing a baby in a woman's womb.
You do a really good, like I don't even want to attempt my Marjorie because yours is actually really good because it's lower pitched. It is kind of like sharper edges like that, and it's good. It's really good.
I don't want it to be too good, but thank you. But that said, that's not even a nuanced version of the pro-life argument. They say it's one thing, but I say it's this. Okay, cool, I guess. And then they say they're women, I say they're men. Good. Let's have a clash of ideologies here for the fate of the civil rights of a group of millions of people. I won't say they're women. Okay, I'm just saying, like again.
Why come?
Better foes.
Why come you can't sneeze with your eyes closed, huh? You say that's science. I say that's Q. Like that's. This is but see here's what I will say. As much as I hate Donald Trump, Marjorie Taylor Greene makes you appreciate that he was a man of few words. Sure, he said them a lot, but his word cloud was very small. So he didn't actually explicitly be like, men are dressing like women. That's wrong. He's just saying, something strange. It's a little weird. Anyway, we've got to protect women. Like, he's just very vague. And the vagary, it comes from the same idiocy, but like Marjorie Greene, her idiocy manifests itself as just like saying the thing, 6 beers in on a porch in, I don't know, the whitest part of South Carolina. Like, that's her id is very dumb, and it's not projected in any kind of vagary or grandiosity or even like bombast that Trump's is, and it just makes it all the more. Yeah, it just makes it all the more like bald-faced and open.
Yeah, and the reason I point this out is I don't get why it worked. Like, they've had better a-holes than this before. Like, this is an a-hole, but it's not even like a good one, like a clever one. Like, if Trump is, this is gonna be the weirdest comparison ever. If Trump is like the get out of a-holes, this is the Karen. Like, this is that like, it goes viral and you're like, I get what you're going for, but I don't think this is really right. It seems a bit over, like it's beating you over the head with it. I just don't get why it would still work in that way.
You're talking about the movie.
Trump is basically Jordan Peele.
Yes. Yeah, but anyway, it is interesting. No, just that it is nice to see someone like this making their, like, truly. Look, this is what Republicans have been saying all the time. They just dress it up in Ivy League language, okay? So the fact that Marjorie Taylor Greene is just openly being a bigot and a homophobe and a racist is like, yeah, because that's what your party has sowed over the last 50 years. This is what you've essentially been saying. Nixon was saying this in private. Yeah, Marjorie Taylor Greene is your product, right? So don't dress it up in your, again, your Harvard degree or your law degree. It doesn't matter. This is still what it is. You want to take healthcare away from poor people. You want to make it easier to incarcerate people of color. You're as racist. You just know how to enshroud it in BS better.
I agree. That just 3 towns: being white, being a jerk. Yeah, lacks the shrouding though. Anyway, we're going to take a break. When we come back, a former senator has passed away. We're going to talk about Mike Revell's legacy after this. And T- in the Twitch chat says, I hate to say this, but MTG makes me wish for the days of Sarah Palin. Yeah, it's not even like folksy. Like, I sort of get why some people like Sarah Palin. With Marjorie Greene, it's just, you're just a bad person. I know I'm biased. Like, I'm a Democrat, I'm on the left or whatever, I'm not gonna like her. But it feels like you should know that she's a bad person anyway. She just doesn't look like a happy, nice person. She looks like a Facebook comment turned into flesh, basically. Anyway, Hottie Meter says, make a-holes great again. That's Trump 2024. Maybe. Anyway, wanted to welcome the new members to the channel, including Tim Johnson and Heather Steele, tier 1 YouTube members. Thank you very much. You get access to the emojis. And Natsu Drag Neil became a tier 2 member, getting access to the weekly top 10 list that Francesca and I do. We're gonna be filming right after this show our top 10 pettiest pet peeves. So I love dwelling in my own pet peeves, so it's gonna be fun. Let's see how petty Francesca can get.
Very.
Anyway, Rob Shively says, I do miss Franny's horns because they reminded me of Marvel's Hela, and that was pretty bad, or that was pretty good. I think that's a character she'd like, Goddess of Death. So yes, you've changed up your background a little bit. It kind of looks like you have wings almost, a little bit. Anyway.
Stop judging a girl's background. Pet peeve, number 1.
I apologize. You are wholly right.
You're supposed to judge me on my outfit, okay? Get it right.
Please, everyone. Okay, Nicole Smith says, even if convicted, he can still be president, but many of his supporters aren't allowed to vote for him as convicted felons. You know what? Just elect him from prison. I think America needs that. No, I don't. Anyway, Gogo Latata says, meanwhile, here in Seattle, my old man and I are hanging out inside with an AC stolen from the pot room, 10:25 a.m. and already 95.
Jeez.
I don't know if Gogo's implying that they have some sort of dedicated marijuana room.
Oh yeah.
But I like it. I like it.
But I thought marijuana needed warmth.
hot. Yeah, doesn't it need grow lamps? I don't know.
Yeah. Okay.
Maybe you put the lamps directly on it, but you want to feel cool as you're tending to it. I don't know.
Okay.
Ferret Queen says, hi, John and friend. I got married this weekend. Rhode Island weather was kind and it went great. Watson the kitten is here watching with us again. He says hi.
Baby.
Happy getting married. That sounds fun.
Congrats.
Congrats. That's awesome. Sean Umpleby says, I'm taller than both of them. 5'5". Boom. Steel Dragon out. Drops the mic. They're both tiny. But doesn't it? Is this weird? Doesn't it seem like AOC would be taller than 5'4"? I feel like she would be.
Yeah,
I wasn't here when she came to the studio, but anyway.
It's the Tom Cruise thing too, I mean, whatever you think about him, but like he projects like, yeah, badass, and he's like, oh, I'm small, I'm a 5'5" man.
I'm an action figure, literally.
Look at him, he's awesome. There's nothing wrong with that. But yeah, he is a shorter guy. But when people project like they're tall, like AOC, obviously, I feel like she'd be like 7 feet at this point. But yeah.
Anyway, okay, so over on Twitch, Octo Squiddy says, you know how Democrats could prevent nuking the filibuster from coming back to bite them? By nuking the filibuster and actually doing something for the American people instead of corporations. Maybe they'd get reelected and could pass more things. Weird thought. Yes, Octo Squiddies, that is basically what I've been screaming for 90 minutes a day for the last. But you're 100% right. Eric subscribed for 9 months. Thank you very much for that. Snake Anthony gifted a tier 1 sub. You're the best. Let's see, a 420 Kitty Dragon says, please remember the animals if you're in an area experiencing extreme heat. Strays and wildlife are at risk. Put water out for them when possible, please. That is very good advice. Please do that. You know who you are and where you live. Anyway, more news coming up after this. Okay, this hour is running out fast. So let's jump right into this. Former Senator and presidential candidate Mike Revell passed away over the weekend. We just wanted to briefly talk a little bit about his legacy, some of the things that he did. I mean, he's largely known for like reading literally thousands of pages of the Pentagon Papers into the congressional record, which would like that sort of thing would be huge now. Doing that 50 years ago or so, even bigger. So that's pretty amazing. He had this to say. Near the end, I'm the fellow that ended the draft. I'm the one that stopped the nuclear testing in the North Pacific. I'm the one that brought about the Alaska pipeline. I'm the one that released the Pentagon Papers and had to go to the Supreme Court because Richard Nixon was trying to throw me in jail. That's what I did 28, 29, 30 years ago. That was leadership then. And I was excoriated by the media at that point. I was a loose cannon. Well, right today, I've had the good fortune to live this long. And people look back and say, my God, were you a courageous leader? Well, that's the leadership you'll get when I become president of the United States. Now, can the American people stand that kind of leadership? That remains to be seen. So obviously that didn't happen, of course. And he's certainly a bold one anyway. But yeah, I want to just give a couple of these quotes that we had culled for this. So on the Pentagon paper says, people, human beings are being killed as I speak to you tonight. Killed as a direct result of policy decisions that we as a body have made. Arms are being severed. Metal is crashing through human bodies because of a public policy. This government, at that point, he began to sob. One may respond that we have made such a sacrifice to preserve freedom and liberty in Southeast Asia. One may respond that we sacrifice ourselves on the continent of Asia so that we will not have to fight a similar war on the shores of America. One can make these arguments only if he has failed to read the Pentagon Papers. That is the terrible truth of it all. And then of course goes on to read so much of it in the congressional record so that it can't be denied and all that. So we have more, Francesca, but what are your thoughts?
Well, first of all, that the reading of the Pentagon Papers barely happened, and Mike Revell and Daniel Ellsberg worked together to make sure that he got a copy. It was like, I can't remember the specifics of it, but it barely happened. But it was so powerful to enter this like devastating information, which was essentially that one, the war had expanded, right? It expanded to Cambodia and Laos, not just Vietnam, but that also it was not going well. They were losing. The United States was losing, and yet we were still there. I believe that was some part of the revelation, and Congress wouldn't have heard about it they would have seen it in the news, sure, but this entered in public record. The American people throughout history will know and can look back at that moment when he took that stand and when he read that in public. So again, these heroic acts that make you sort of the loose cannon, make you the weirdo, makes Bernie Sanders you were an independent. Yeah, he was an independent. That allowed him to rise above some of your partisan BS and actually, stand for something.
Yeah, and like, how much longer would it have taken? How many more lives would have been lost? Like, these are obviously incredibly important questions. And it's not to say that, like, any politician, especially a politician who's been in the public figure for literally decades, the public eye for literally decades, not to say that we agree with everything they did, clearly. But we can admire, especially stances like this that are so consequential when it comes to war and American imperialism and all that. Now, that said, I want to take you back to the 2008 presidential campaign and a debate where he did some calling out of other candidates. I think we have time for this. Let's go to that video.
These people frighten me. They frighten me. When you have mainline candidates that turn around and say that there's nothing off the table with respect to Iran, that's code for using nukes, nuclear devices. I got to tell you, I'm president of the United States. There will be no preemptive wars with nuclear devices. To my mind, it's immoral, and it's been immoral for the last 50 years as part of American foreign policy.
Let's use a little moderator discretion here. Senator Revell, that's a weighty charge. Who on this stage exactly tonight worries you so much?
Well, I would say the top tier ones. The top tier ones. They've made statements. Oh, Joe, I'll include you too. You have a certain arrogance. You want to tell the Iraqis how to run their country. I got to tell you, we should just play get out. Just play get out. It's their country. They're asking us to leave, and we insist on staying there. And why not get out? What harm is it going to do? Oh, you hear the statement, well, my God, the soldiers will have died in vain. The entire deaths of Vietnam died in vain. And they're dying in vain right this very second. You know what's worse than a soldier dying in vain is more soldiers dying in vain. That's what's worse.
I mean, that's one of the best things I've ever seen on the debate stage, I think, right there. Okay, we don't have much more time, unfortunately, but Francesca, any other thoughts?
No, I mean, that's super heroic. And I think it's really funny that he's calling out Biden, Obama, and Hillary, who all wanted to continue the war, except for Obama, right? That's how he was distinguished. And I would argue with his longer conversation, that is what distinguished him from Clinton, was that Obama really did want to get out of Iraq and then did, and Hillary Clinton was not so sure, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, good on him. Good on him, yeah. And what a great way to point out the most ridiculous argument for staying in a war, which is, well, then all these the people who died, would have died for nothing. It's like, so we got to kill more people. Makes no
exactly.
sense.
It's the sunk cost fallacy, but for something not important. It's not money. We're only talking about lives, basically. Yeah, you're 100% right.
Yeah.
I love that he called out Biden, and look at the moderator protecting him there, trying to like get him to back down. Isn't that weird? Anyway, thank you, our linear audience. The show goes on online though. We got more news for you after this. Hey YouTubes, hey Twitch. I see you members app. We got more show for you. Thanks for joining us. And after our show, we got even more other show for you. That would be Indisputable coming up right after the program. Dr. Rashad Ritchie, you've got Chuck Rocha, Major Williams, and Charles F. Coleman will be the co-host. So that is coming up. You can go to youtube.com/indisputable to subscribe. You might get notifications. It is YouTube after all, so maybe you won't, but it's your best chance of getting notifications. So you might want to try that. Anywho, let me read just a couple quick super chats before we jump in the news. Rajan Savani says, is it me or is this whole Trump storyline arc like the movie The Running Man? Mike Lindell is Captain Freedom, Green is Sub-Zero, Trump is as fragile as Killian. Who loves you and who do you love? I didn't see The Running Man. And I'm gonna get a talking to from Bart later on. But thank you for the super chat. I'm sure for people who've seen it, it was spot on. Finally, Bernie the Kiwi Dragon says, hi John and Fran, seeing you do your good impressions, have you ever considered voice acting? John, I never thought we would hear you talk about how a-holes can receive your stamp of approval. Did you never think that? Anyway, yeah, Francesca, I think that you should do some sort of animated Greta Thunberg segment. I think it would work quite well.
I would love to, but that sounded like Bjork.
It was pretty good though.
Hire me, please.
Feel free. Taco Salad, subscribe for 12 months on Twitch. Thank you so much for that. Hitting the year mark, and the Curd Burglar hit 13 months. Curd Burglar, I see you. Thank you. Okay, with that, we got a lot of news to get to. Let's do that. In terms of consequences for politicians who were in favor of the insurrection on January 6th, whether the storming the building and pooping on the floor kind or the trying to overturn the vote kind, which the politicians themselves took part in, there haven't been many consequences. But one was that at least briefly, corporations said that they would not be donating money to them. So right afterward, about 170 different companies announced they were suspending donations from their corporate PACs to the 147 different Republicans who voted to overturn the election results, or that they weren't gonna give to anyone, which is like the most ridiculous both sidesing ever. Now, on April 15th, there was the first major campaign finance deadline since that pledge. They had to provide information about what donations they've given, and those findings, according to Judligam at Popular Info, reveal that most corporations that said they were suspending their donations have actually kept their word. So that is, I think, an important finding coming out of this, is that a lot of them so far have kept their word. Now, bear in mind, there haven't been a lot of elections. We'll see what happens when the midterms come. But that said, some very much are already giving again. And Axios put together this visualization of the number of donations and the amount of donations that different companies have been doing. And there's a lot of big ones: AT&T, Cigna, Koch Industries. Some of those others I don't know, but Deere and Company, I think I know that one. But Toyota is actually leading the pack, almost lapping the pack there, way beyond the others. And that's interesting. So what's going on there? Well, Toyota said soon after the insurrection, given recent events and the horrific attack on the US Capitol, we are assessing our future PAC criteria. But it only took a few weeks for them to start donating, not just to politicians, but to the politicians that voted against certifying the Electoral College. They ended up so far, by the time of that first FEC filing date, they donated to 40 different Republicans, $62,000 overall. And not just ones that voted for it. Some, like Congressman Andy Biggs, were like the most out in front in saying that the election was fake, it needs to be overturned, and they are financially supporting him once again. Now, we'll have their response to this information coming out, but Francesca, what are your thoughts?
I'm gonna go burn my Prius. I think that's what the woke thing to do is to light it on fire. And drive it into the ocean.
I mean, those might cancel out a bit, but I think it'll be destroyed. I get your point. Yeah, it's disappointing.
It's very disappointing, but it also makes absolute sense that these corporations, I don't know why Toyota more, are we afraid of whatever we're afraid of? We're afraid that like we might raise the minimum wage, or we afraid there's gonna be corporate taxes, or we afraid any of the number of things that it's mostly just money. It's mostly that. It's mostly just trying to get one over on workers and making sure they don't pay any more taxes. That's pretty much it. Yeah. And so yes, in theory, I mean, this is the same thing with the BLM performative, corporate stuff that was happening a year ago. Like, we understand that their bottom line is their bottom line, and that they're not going to do anything that would threaten that. Companies are not going to come out against prison labor, even though that would be, when it comes to criminal justice reform, a thing you should do. But they won't, because they make money off of it.
Yeah. I mean, look, so I'm looking, we have these donations, and great work, Axios talking about it, Judd Legum did. I'm also just looking at their overall donations, and they do the sort of thing that you would expect. So they maxed out $10,000 corporate donation to Hakeem Jeffries, Democrat, and $10,000 to Darrell Issa, a Republican. Richard Neal, Democrat, maxed out. Rodney Davis, Republican, maxed out. They max out to basically all of them, so that no matter who wins, they get what they want. Which, by the way, is there any better just like devastation of the argument that no, these donations aren't a bribe. A bribe changes the behavior. All we're doing is rewarding politicians who already agree with us. We like their position that they already genuinely have, and we're financially benefiting it. For Darrell Issa and Hakeem Jeffries, Marjorie Greene and Ilhan Omar, we're just donating to everybody. I don't know if they donated to those two. No. We're just donating to everybody. So it is clearly intended to be a bribe, and Toyota is only one of literally thousands of companies that do this. But to donate so readily, like, you have to donate to Andy Biggs a month after the insurrection. You have to do that.
Andy Biggs helped plan the Stop the Steal rally. We don't talk about this enough. Mo Brooks, Andy Biggs, Paul Gosar, these are planners of the Stop the Steal rally, currently still sitting congressmen. So yeah, did you have to donate to the planners of the rally? The insurrectionists specifically?
Apparently.
Hakeem Jeffries makes total sense though, John. I mean, look, he just announced that he was creating some sort of like anti-squad pack, or some initiative in the Democratic caucus to basically stop the growth of the squad and stop the growth of Justice Democrats. Yeah. So somebody's scared.
Yeah, well, let's give them a chance to respond.
Sure.
So let's see. They said, we do not believe it is appropriate to judge members of Congress solely based on their votes on the electoral certification. Okay, so I don't necessarily think that we all need to be single issue voters or D voters, but that said, if you were gonna choose one thing, seems like an okay one. I mean, they don't think elections should count. That's fairly fundamental, I think, in a democracy, whether you think elections should count or whether, if we have enough power and we can just overwhelm them, we get to say no. But no, apparently that is by itself not enough. Now, they did say, based on our thorough review, I bet it was so thorough, we decided against giving to some members who, through their statements and actions, undermine the legitimacy of our elections and institutions. And to that I would say, you can go F yourself, Toyota, because you gave to Andy Biggs. So your review wasn't that thorough, okay? Now, they didn't respond to a follow-up from Axios about the specific threshold for statements that cross the line. And the reason for that might be because they were okay with guys like who are literally doing Stop the Steal stuff, planning, as Francesca said, the actual rally. So no, there's no threshold. It's not some sort of objective or even somewhat squishy standard. They're giving to the politicians they want to. That's what it is. They've limited some that they don't think are necessary. But no matter how bad an anti-democratic a politician is, if they think that they need him to have their back, they're gonna support him. That is clearly what Toyota is doing here.
Yeah. I mean, look, again, the bottom line, it's their bottom. They know who's gonna protect them. They know that when so-called socialism comes, which it's not, it's just asking you to pay your fair share and for people to like make a living. That these are the Congress people who will not at all. And it's so funny because it's not that much money. I mean, that's the thing. You're like 50,000. It's not, but it doesn't speak to whether they could totally bribe with more. but our politicians suck so hard that it doesn't take that much money to bribe them. All you need is $50,000. You could do $3,000, $5,000.
Yeah, like it really is such an indictment of who they are. Like theoretically, everyone has a price that they would sell out, for. Like,
sure.
$600,000
right here.
$50 million, $600,000 specifically. She knows exactly what it is.
Good health care.
Exactly, it might take $600,000 for that. If it's $10,000, man, you didn't give a damn about any of this. Like that is, and they're all rich. They're all already rich. So man, you just have no values whatsoever. Hold out for like $1 million. Come on. Anyway, with that, let's move on because there's 2 more topics I want to make sure that we get to, and somehow even this 90-minute show passes by so fast. Okay, let's jump to our next story. We're supposed to be so scared of socialism. You're supposed to be able to just say that politician right there, that's a socialist, and they're done. That's been the playbook that right-wing candidates, the media, even a lot of establishment Dems have used to end the careers of some politicians. But will that work for much longer? Well, according to recent polling, perhaps not. Because new survey data, this is coming from Axios and Momentive, say that 57% of Gen Z, these are people between 18 and 24 years old, hold negative views of capitalism, more than it's a majority. Meanwhile, just 42% of the young generation view it favorably. Those numbers have been changing. 49% were positive for capitalism, with 46 negative. Just a few years ago, it was significantly more positive, 58 positive, 38 negative. So first of all, Francesca, before we move to the views on socialism specifically, why do you think it is that over the last couple of years, so many young people would be going negative on capitalism?
It's just like not doing the TikTok dances right. And I feel like it like tries too hard. Like capitalism, like calm down or whatever. Like, you can't sit with us. Candace Owens will straight up do this video of like, people are mean to capitalism. It's like racism. MLK once said, like this is, no, obviously, and it makes sense. John, I think we both care a lot about climate change. I think everyone really under the age of 24, also, since we are under the age of 24, also cares about climate change, and you cannot square infinite growth, infinite consumption, infinite purchasing on a finite planet. You cannot square that. You cannot make the argument that capitalism will do anything but slowly choke our planet to death. And that is exactly what's happening. And that is not lost on young people. You can't shine flashy objects at them so that they believe it to be so. And they see like, we're gonna be getting into the generations. I mean, if we think, that the generation now has an unfavorable view of capitalism, what about like our kids, like the millennials kids, where their parents are, really scraping by, definitely do not have the wealth that their parents have, that boomers had, right? Our generation is a generation that is making less than their parents. Think about what our kids are gonna be like. Just raging revolutionaries. I'm very excited for it.
I certainly hope so. I think I have a point I want to make, but first I want to give the socialism numbers. I want to tie this together.
Yes, please.
So overall, the majority of Americans still hold favorable views of capitalism, coming in at 57%. 36% is negative. 7% were unsure. That includes a lot of older people, by the way. By the way, the number of young Republicans with a favorable view of capitalism has dropped from 81% 2 years ago to 66%. That is a huge drop right there. So now for socialism. And sorry to the director for jumping around like that. Back in 2019, a similar poll found that 39% of respondents viewed socialism positively. The new survey shows it's moved up by 2 points. Interestingly though, the survey additionally found that 2/3 of Americans believe the government should pursue policies that address economic inequality and reduce the growing gap between the wealthy and the less well off. That number moved up 4 points in the last 2 years. It's up to 60, where before it was at 62%. A majority of young Republicans said they believe the government should work to reduce the wealth gap as well. So there's 3 things. There's, do you like the socialism as a label? There's, do you want the government to do things that is kind of what that means, but maybe you're being thrown off by the label? And there, even a majority of young Republicans are like, yeah, no, it's an objective good to reduce wealth inequality. That's really something. The third point, though, is, and this is why I wanted to return to this, because I briefly talked about this story on Friday's pre-show, but I wanted your thoughts on this. It is one thing for these views to be out there. It's another for people to act politically based on them. So are those young Republicans going to produce a different Republican Party in 15 years? Or are they going to think, I really don't like capitalism, but critical race theory and Mr. Potato Head's penis and Dr. Seuss? So are they going to be successfully disarmed by all this BS? Or is this a sign that fundamentally the Democratic Party and perhaps the Republican Party as well are gonna have to change?
I mean, you answered the question. You know what my answer is. I hope.
What is your answer?
I mean, I really do hope that the Republican Party changes. I am not holding my breath, and I absolutely think that, the culture war can go very, very far. But I also think that the culture war is specifically designed for, and I don't mean to be judgmental about older people, but I think older Republicans who are largely comfortable. And again, I disbelieve, and the stats prove that like a lot of Trump voters were not working people. They were middle income people. They were fairly comfortable. They were boat dads. They were people who took private jets over to insurrect, And so I do think that when you've got everything kind of going for you, that Dr. Seuss being canceled can be your little pet issue. But when you don't have things going for you, when it's hard to start your own business or be an entrepreneur, or it's difficult to get a degree and you're strapped with debt, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, then yeah, your party's gonna have to change, and you're not gonna be speaking to people anymore by dangling, WAP is anti-woman kind of low-hanging fruit. So there's that, and there's the other thing which I'm gonna say is like, look, the stuff that young people are saying is socialism isn't socialism. It's just that we've got such a skewed political system and political discourse in this country that like anything that looks like public spending is socialism, and it's been this way for a while. Medicare, Medicaid were called socialist, Social Security was called socialist, the GI Bill was called socialist. All of these things that have fundamentally helped people were at one point or another called socialist. Now, do we look like an actual socialist country? No, right? I mean, are we looking like, Bolivarian socialism of Venezuela? No. Do we even look like Sweden in the 70s? No. Do you know what I mean? But like, so just again, like we have to temper, and we have to understand like what socialism actually is, and what we're just saying is more public spending.
Yeah, it's what they think of as socialism is a functioning government, basically a government that identifies and fixes problems. Like literally do anything. Don't just give money away to the rich and corporations. Yeah, do something. Pop up. Anyway, okay, we have very little time. We have a few minutes left for this last story. I'm so glad that we're gonna get to it really fast. I just wanted to read one or two comments. Electron Creations in the YouTube chat said that old senile has-been Bill Maher is always trashing young people. This 65-year-old woman looks for the value in younger people. From Cindy. Thank you, Cindy, I appreciate that.
Yes.
Yes, okay. Andrew says, I wonder if Toyota is trying to game an emissions test, like trying to get out in front of an old VW. That situation right there. Ooh, we'll see. Anthony says Marjorie Greene is popular because of her unrefined approach. Her base has become so radicalized they prefer her unskilled approach. But it's not really what I mean. I don't mean that it's not refined. I mean, there's no value add. She is giving like the generic boxed cereal version of all of these arguments. There's no fancy characters, there's no art, there's no games on the back. It just says cereal. It just seems boring. Like, why aren't they bored by this? I don't get it. But anyway, okay, really fast. Z Huddle gifted 2 tier 1 subs over on Twitch, which I really appreciate. Thank you. Khalil subscribed for the 11th month, which is awesome. Fritters for 3. Thank you, Fritters. I appreciate that. The Dalek Dragon subscribed for 5 months. Thank you, Dalek Dragon. I appreciate that. And with that, let's get into this last story. We are moving ever closer to the Olympics, and it's the qualifying process has produced a little bit of news. I've been watching some of the gymnastics, but over in the track and field sports, generating a different sort of discussion. Most recently about the actions of hammer thrower Gwen Berry, who turned away from the flag to face the stands while the Star-Spangled Banner played during the medal ceremony on Saturday. She then draped a t-shirt bearing the words activist athlete over her head. Now, that has produced the sort of reaction you might expect in America. Now, bear in mind, she says she feels like they specifically played the Star-Spangled Banner there when she was sitting there because they know about her past statements about the flag and about activism and all that. She said they were going to play it before we walked out, then they played it when we were out there. But I don't really want to talk about the anthem because that's not important. The anthem doesn't speak to me. It never has. And she had previously said, my purpose and my mission is bigger than sports. I'm here to represent those who died due to systemic racism. That's the important part. That's why I'm going. That's why I'm here today. She's previously said, I'm an American, but I can honestly say I'm not proud of things this country stands for, and we can do better. I want to represent people who cannot represent themselves, and I want to speak for people who can't speak for themselves. So giving quite a bit of nuance and background to why she might do something like turn away from the flag. And of course, all of those who want to wrap themselves in the flag and do other horrible things to the flag are not going to listen to any of that. It's just an excuse to attack her. Ted Cruz tweeted, why does the left hate America? Sure, we have our faults, but no nation, like for instance, we don't defend our wives when they're viciously attacked online. But no nation in the history of the world has liberated more people from captivity, has lifted more out of poverty, has bled more for freedom, or in a civil war bled to stop freedom, or has blessed more with abundance. God bless America. Ben Shapiro said that feeling when you finish third but still finish first in the self-involvement Olympics. He's not self-involved at all. Scott Walker says, what is wrong with people? Growing up, everyone stood for the American flag. Growing up, everyone was as happy and well off as I was. Everyone had white privilege like I did. I'm adding a little bit there, but I'm not interested in what he really said. What I want to jump to though is what I knew is gonna happen, which is this. The anti-cancel culture, anti-PC right is gonna react exactly like you'd expect to her turning her back on the flag. So here's a bit of Congressman Crenshaw.
We don't need any more activist athletes. She should be removed from the team. The entire point of the Olympic team is to represent the United States of America. That's the entire point. Okay, so it's one thing when these NBA players do it. Okay, fine, we'll just stop watching. But now the Olympic team, and it's multiple cases.
Okay, so she should be taken off the team. She turned her back, she should be taken off the team. Charlie Kirk tweeted, athletes that don't honor the American flag should be banned from all competition. David Steinberg, who's an editor for some right-wing things, said, send the fourth place finisher. She has a world of options. And I only include him because I looked at his profile and he credits himself as ending PC era by exposing Ilhan Omar. So just to be clear, Francesca, they want her to be canceled from the team, banned from it because she did something they consider politically incorrect. But they're all totally against cancel culture and all that. What do you think?
No, you said it right there. That's exactly right. That is 100%. We should keep on saying that over and over and over again. You participate. In fact, you want to increase cancel culture, but just against people whose views you disagree with. All to them, I just say, you get a hammer and you get a hammer and you get a hammer and you get a hammer. All right, she's a hammer thrower. She can give it to you whenever you want. This is, look, here's the thing. I am so supportive of her and her statement. And just saying, I am an activist and an athlete at the same time. Usually athletes are always told to shut up, to just do their sport, and then as we saw, in tennis with Naomi Osaka, right? Like that you must do your, give your little press interview and then go away and then shut up and don't say anything about politics. Then we'll like you, right? And that's BS. No. Athletes should be able to do and express themselves if they want. She already represents the United States. I never stand for the anthem when I go to baseball games. That's just my thing ever since the Iraq War. And yeah, shout out to Tommy Smith and John Carlos who raised their fists in 1968, the Summer Olympics, in that classic historic photo during a really pivotal, important time in this country. And we are in another one of those times. So good on Gwen.
Agreed, but because you sit for the national anthem, I'm gonna have to cancel the Bitchuation Room, which all of you should definitely check out. Thank you, Francesca, as always, for joining us. We're gonna be filming our top 10 list, top 10 most petty pet peeves coming up after this. And Indisputable is coming up, so go to youtube.com/indisputable_TYT. But that said, until next time, stay safe out there, stay sane out there, and I'll see you soon.
Welcome to Indisputable. I'm your host, Dr. Rashad Richard. We got a live one today. Ladies and gentlemen, you do not want to miss my I Wish a Karen Would segment. Let me just say this. Do you like double whoppers? That's my only hint I'm giving you. Also on the show, my co-host today breaking down news of the day, civil rights attorney Charles F. Coleman Jr. will be on the program. I will introduce him in just a moment. Let me say a big thank you to everyone who has been supporting this show. We had a goal of 100,000 subscribers for our YouTube channel, Indisputable TYT. We had a goal. We thought this goal would be months in the making. Well, in 3 weeks, we have exceeded that goal. We are over 100,000 subscribers for Indisputable TYT, and that's all because of you. And I want to say thank you for that personally. Also, we had over 2 million combined views last week on that YouTube channel. So big ups to you for making that happen. This is a place where we are in the business of distribution of truth. And as always, truth is simply indisputable. Let's get to my top story. The verdict, the sentencing. You know it well by now. And some people are celebrating this and calling it justice. I have a different point of view. And let me break it down. George Floyd, an African-American male, unarmed, should be alive today, but he was killed. He was killed because of an out-of-control police officer who was protected by a mob of other cops. Now, if they did not have a badge and a gun, this would be considered gang activity. And they would have had the gang aggravator to enhance their sentence given the crime that was committed. But because this person had a gun and a badge, there seems to be a level of indoctrination. You still have individuals saying that George Floyd died because of a drug overdose, contrary to the evidence, contrary to the testimony of experts. Derek Chauvin was sentenced to 22.5 years. The minimum, or excuse me, the guideline was 12.5 years. The prosecution, they requested 30 years. The maximum was 40 years. If you ran it concurrent, now you're talking about 70 years. So it's a whole lot of years here that you're dealing with. But he received 22 years and 6 months. Let me tell you why I'm not celebrating this as a victory for justice. Now, should he go to jail? Of course he should go to jail. I think he should have received the maximum. And I'm not saying this based on emotion. I'm saying this based on the aggravating factors surrounding the crime. He did this in front of children. He did this in front of a community. How many people you know that can commit cold blood in front of children and they do not get the maximum sentence? I want you to think about this in another term. I want you to consider that this person was not a police officer. I want you to think about it this way. Let's say Derek Chauvin was just a white man who decided to kill a black man because of a confrontation. And he did so with the protection of his 3 friends who stopped anybody from stopping him from doing this murder. And he slowly choked the life with his knee out of the soul of this black man in front of everybody, children, the community, a first responder. And he did this, and it was caught on video, and it was egregious. And it shocked the conscience of everybody that a white man woke up one morning and killed an unarmed black man that should be alive today in front of everybody in that community on video. Slow death, as this black man cried out for his deceased mother. You and I would all say this should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, period. But because he has a badge and a gun, we allow a judge to say 22.5 years is enough. Let me remind you of what Chauvin said right before the sentencing.
I do want to give my condolences to the Floyd family. There's going to be some other information in the future that would be of interest. And I hope things will give you some peace of mind. Thank you.
First of all, damn your condolences. Condolences? You don't even apologize for committing murder, for taking an entire person away out of a family. No. And then you say something cryptic like you're about to launch another defense. And I do believe that his wording was about launching some defense in the future. And then you told the family you hope it gives them some peace. The hell is wrong with this man? If that doesn't convince you that he has no remorse for what he's done, I want to remind you of a little girl who would never be able to have her dad help her brush her teeth.
What do you miss most about your daddy?
Well, I ask about him all the time. And that's kind of it.
Yeah. Well, when you ask about him, what are you asking about?
Well, I was asking, how did my dad get hurt?
Do you wish that he was still here with us?
Yeah, but he is.
Through his spirit?
Yes.
Yes. And when you see your daddy again one day, what do you want to do when you see him?
I want to play with him.
What kind of games do you want to play with him?
I wanna play with him, have fun, go on a plane ride, and that's it.
Yeah.
We used to have dinner meals every single night before we went to bed. My daddy always used to help me brush my teeth.
You see, if you're not broken up by that, it's because you have no heart. For those of us who do have a heart, that's hard to watch. I saw for the first time on Friday. It doesn't get easier to see that. That is the impact of a murderer named Derek Chauvin. Now there is some legislative victory out of this, a small victory. Top Democrats and Republicans in the state legislature said while not every aspect of the public safety and judiciary budget bill is finalized, they've reached a compromise on key parts. The agreement includes creating a police misconduct database to be able to detect and keep bad officers off the streets, regulating the use of no-knock warrants, and creating offices or task forces to look into missing or murdered Indigenous and Black women, according to CARE 11. It took this in order for us to have some common sense legislation that we need to keep tabs on bad cops. I mean, cops know your record. Why can't you know the cops' record? To talk more about this, I have on the show none other than civil rights attorney extraordinaire, Mr. Charles F. Coleman Jr. Charles, thank you for being on Indisputable.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me. Really glad to be here.
Glad to have you. I know you followed this case up and down, in and out. You saw the verdict, you saw the sentencing, you saw the cryptic and ridiculous response of Chauvin before the sentencing. What are your thoughts about this?
Well, it's interesting because one of the things that sometimes people forget is that I'm actually a former prosecutor as well. So when I'm processing these cases, when I'm looking at how the case was presented, the verdict, the sentencing, I'm looking at it both from the lens of how I would have tried the case as a prosecutor, what I would have asked for, and then ultimately what I think was fair as someone who has defended people in court as well. And what I will say is I do think that the prosecution did the right thing in terms of what the book says when you ask for 30 years and not the maximum. And the reason for that is because you do want to create some level of consistency and some level of precedent. And because of the lack of a criminal record prior to this incident, it would have been inconsistent for them to ask for the maximum in this case, despite the fact that many of us may feel it was warranted. Now, at the same time that I say that, I have no problem acknowledging that one of the most aggravating factors here that I think prosecutors could have gone for more than the 30 years that they asked for was the egregious breach of the public trust that is involved when police officers abuse their power. There were 4 different aggravating factors that the judge cited in terms of what the prosecutors had put before him, and 2 of them were things that he considered. One of them was, as you've already mentioned, there were children who were present. There were minors who were present for this unfortunate and terrible, heinous act of murder in the middle of the day on video. A minor as old as 17 and as young as 9. And second, there was a significant breach of abusing power, the abuse of power that comes with being an officer of the law and what is required there, and the responsibility that you have, and the amount of trust that is placed in you by the public. And so, from my standpoint, I think that would have warranted a greater sentence than what it is that he received. I also think that even as we lament the fact that he did not receive additional time, when put into context, this frames what is essentially the problem with the level of carte blanche that police officers receive across this country. And even though we're talking about the execution of their duties or within the execution of their duties, I want to put something in perspective. Derek Chauvin was sentenced to 22.5 years for the top count of 2nd-degree murder. The average civilian who is doing non-federal time for the same time is sentenced and serving almost double that at about 40 years and some change.
Wow, that's perspective.
So for as much as we want to have this conversation and say, well, this is a step in the right direction, this is moving in the right direction, it doesn't, in my opinion, discourage police who are determined to abuse their power any more than this policing act will, or anything of that nature, because there's still such a huge disparity in terms of how civilians are treated, as you illuminated, talking about how Derek Chauvin would have been treated by this legal system were it not for the fact that he had a badge and a gun and was a police officer, as compared to civilians. And so I think it's critical that we maintain that level of context and understanding around this entire situation.
Very good point, very good point. And when the prosecutor requested additional time, they cited many of those elements that the judge talked about, including the violation of the public trust. It was done in front of children, etc. But I also want to remind people, because if you're saying that this is justice, I want to remind everyone that while the sentencing says 22 and a half years, he is likely to serve roughly 13 years because he's up for probation in 15 years. And then he also received credit for time served. So now you're looking at really a 13-year jail stint if everything goes along with the sentencing mandate and there's no appeal that gets him out any sooner. He is still facing federal charges. That is a separate case, but we'll keep our eyes on that. Let me move to my next story. This is just so damn sad. So damn sad. Can you imagine saving the lives of people around you because an individual is carrying a semi-automatic weapon hell-bent on killing people? You act in protection of life, you disarm this individual, you shoot this individual, you kill this individual who has already killed one person, and then the police, when they respond, they kill you. To add irony to it, the person that the individual killed was a cop. This is what happened. This is in Denver. A man who was a good Samaritan intervened in a shooting that killed a police officer near Denver, was shot and killed by a responding officer while holding the suspect's AR-15, police said on Friday. Johnny Hurley, who has been described by police as a hero, I'm sure he would rather be described as alive, this guy prevented further bloodshed, shot the suspect, Ronald Troche, on Monday after the suspect gunned down an Arvada officer, Gordon Beasley, with a 12-gauge semi-automatic shotgun. After the shooting, it was chaos, people were running. But what's important to note, and there's very little national attention on this story. What's important to note is that the deemed hero was not pointing this AR-15 at anyone. You see, and this is the part of the story that we have to focus on. When the police arrived, he's the good guy, right? He's the guy that just stopped an individual from indiscriminately killing a bunch of other people. Police arrive and they just automatically kill him. Now, why do you think that is? They know that the suspect that they are approaching has killed a cop or at least shot a cop. So do you think maybe perhaps in the mind of the responding officer, he said, I don't give a damn if this guy points a gun at me or not, I'm going to kill him as soon as I pull up? That's what I believe happened in this case. Why would the Good Samaritan make an aggressive action toward the police officers that he has already protected? This is a hell of a story. One of the reports said in BuzzFeed, a Good Samaritan shot a man who ambushed and killed a Colorado police officer, likely saving other lives, only to be fatally shot himself by responding officers. Officials confirmed this on Friday. Gordon was targeted because he was wearing an Arvada police uniform and a badge. This guy was a resource officer. According to the police, the gunman the killer left behind a document which stated that he had intended to target police officers on a deadly rampage. His brother, the shooter's brother, said, hey, there's something going on with my brother. I think he's gonna do something very dangerous. I need someone to do a wellness check. Well, he was correct. He was correct on his assumption about what was happening with his brother, that something bad was going to happen. My goal today is to kill Arvada PD officers, the document reportedly stated. We the people were never your enemy, but we are now. The note contains several other statements targeting police, including, this is what you get. You are the people who are expendable, and hundreds of you pigs should be killed daily. Let me bring up a picture of the police officer, Gordon Beasley, who was killed. That's Gordon Beasley. He's the guy that was killed. Johnny Hurley is the man who killed the person who killed him. Let's show a picture of Johnny Hurley, who they are calling a hero, but he's dead. He's dead for saving the lives of other cops and saving the lives likely of those around the individual who was shooting people. But the cops respond and they kill the hero. Now, damn, come on. If that is not a case that there is something dramatically wrong with law enforcement, because you can't tell me this hero made an aggressive action to shoot a cop and he deserved to die. He was simply a man with a gun, and that's all it took for them, which means that if the suspect simply had the gun on him, he would have been dead too. George, you're a former prosecutor, brother. You already know you don't get shot out of revenge. This cop assumed this was the same person that killed another cop. He made that assumption. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think that part of what we're talking about here is the very toxic nature of American policing. And I think that there's no way to get around that. At the end of the day, one of the things that I find to be most troubling about this story and other stories that take place in certain states, you're in Georgia, I'm in New York. The rules on gun possession in those states are extremely different. What I do know is that the state of Colorado does allow you to possess a firearm, and it does allow for open carry. So when you are in a space as a law enforcement official, and you are approaching someone in an open carry jurisdiction, that alone needs to dictate a greater degree of care around the situation. Bar none. I said that with Alton Sterling in Louisiana. I said that in other cases, Philando Castile in Minnesota. And I'm saying it now as it relates to this because the mere idea of you being in possession of a weapon, which in that jurisdiction is lawful for you to possess, dictates that police have to have a different type of approach when they're dealing in these situations. Now, if you go further and you unpack what we have happened here, we do know that the officer who arrived on the scene, who ultimately shot the gentleman who they later named the hero, was aware that an officer had been killed. However, as you said, it simply isn't logical and does not make sense that upon arriving on the scene, the same person who saved one officer would then make an aggressive movement toward another officer. I think that another part of what makes these situations so challenging, not just the tragic nature of them, but overall the failure to ultimately have accountability for bad policing when you see bad policing. And as a former prosecutor, as someone who organizes in community regularly, as someone who has been on the fight for civil rights and social justice for a while, one of the things that I can tell you is that bar none, law enforcement is one of the staunchest resisting communities to acknowledging the need to do things better in their profession. Yeah, I have sat with members and leaders in the tech space who said, you know what, we've got to do better about diversity. I have talked to people in the healthcare space who said, you know what, we've got to do a better job closing disparity. I've sat with people in education who have said, we've got to rethink how do we close this achievement gap. And yet and still, despite all of the facts, all of the statistics and all of the numbers, law enforcement is routinely the only group who consistently says, you don't know how difficult it is to do our job. You don't know how hard it is to be a law enforcement officer. And I think that when you look at the explanation that was offered in this case, this is exactly what you see, because it is yet again another example of law enforcement resisting the opportunity to simply be accountable when something tragic like this has occurred.
We're going to continue to follow this story because I want to see accountability to this police officer who, in my opinion, committed murder. I'm going to stay on top of this. But George, you said something really powerful, man. And your context is spot on. Policing routinely is the only profession that says we don't need to do better. We know better than you. There's no issue that we need to resolve inside of the ranks of our profession. I'm a college professor. I'm a member of the American Association of University Professors. Hell, 50% of the time, we're talking about ways that we can become better professors, that we can become better educators, can connect curriculum, utilize pedagogy to make sure that we bring out the best in our students, because we have to be self-analytical and self-critical for that process to work. But you're right, policing, even though 96% of Americans, they say it needs to be reformed, 58% say it needs to be a dramatic reform. You look at a stat that just came out, 2% of major crimes are actually solved by police. 11% end up in an arrest. We're talking about major crimes. What government body can have a 2 to 11% effectiveness rate and still be considered the top echelon of government work or of government enterprising? Nobody would. Everybody would say there needs to be change here. All right, we got more on the other side. It's indisputable. I'm Dr. Rashad Ritchie.
You know what the progressive movement needs? It needs a little energy, a little pizzazz, maybe a little caffeine. Oh, coffee. But what if it was Too Strong Coffee? Yes, new, toostrongcoffee.com/TYT. Look, this helps progressive causes. It's also organic and fair trade, so you've got peace of mind that it was done right, and it happens to taste great. So check it out right now at toostrongcoffee.com/TYT.
300 million is a pretty good number, Well, that's the size of the US population. You know what our next target is? The size of the entire world.
We just crossed 5 billion views on YouTube.
I mean, imagine 10 years ago thinking one day. We looked at you like, are you nuts?
Young Turks has just passed another milestone, 15 billion views. Damn. All right, lots of comments. You guys are the best.
I'm gonna read a few comments from our members.
Mr. Methuselah says on YouTube, super chat, thanks for all the important work you do for TYT for the movement.
Do you know who had the first super chat when I got back from vacation? You won't be surprised to find out. Rob Shively, what do you know? Rob says, rejoice, for Dragon Daddy has returned.
This question sent to us by Izzy Sanchez Jr. Is it me, or is Meghan McCain talking as fast as Ben Shapiro? Is that the way the right tries to look smart and intellectual? Well, yes.
Michael Nathan writes it on Twitter. Did Anna choose Cenk's outfit today? I'm sure it wasn't Cenk himself. Man Bun Cenk and Skinny Jeans says, so now Anna has pointed out, okay, that's his handle.
T. Joyce, 1971, saying Donald Trump is good at pulling out of things, NAFTA, the Iran deal, NATO. It's just too bad Fred Trump didn't.
All right, let me do a little quick plug here. It's not even a plug, I'm bragging, okay? I'm bragging, watch me. We have a channel on YouTube, a whole channel devoted just to the Young Turks. It's badass, right? Wow, man.
I can see the voice.
You guys are rock stars.
Unbelievable. Senator Sanders, welcome to Revell headquarters.
Man, you guys are amazing. We gave you what you wanted.
Okay. Speaking of shirts.
I have a surprise.
You reached a lot of people. You are the Young Turks. And we have spread that progressive message wide and far. Let's keep it going.
I'm Nina Turner, and we are on the road to revolution, baby. And I know sometimes people talk about the angry black woman, but I'm gonna tell you something. If you ain't mad as a mofo about what's going on here, something is wrong with you.
When people ask me all the time, what are the lessons from 2020, is that progressives have to get more organized and we got to come together. We have to be as agile as neoliberals. The progressive movement has to understand that it's not just enough for us to have the right ideas. We are right on most of the ideas. We're not perfect, but we're 99% right because it is a humanitarian agenda, but we must get the power. We have to come together in a more unified way so that we utilize our power strategically to topple neoliberalism, and it's gonna happen.
What's happening? Welcome back to Indisputable. I have with me Charles F. Coleman Jr. I'm so thankful for this really legendary civil rights attorney being on the program today. Let's read some of these super chats. Thank you for chiming in. And once again, everyone, make sure you subscribe to Indisputable TYT, Indisputable TYT on the YouTube page. It is free, it is quick, it is simple. Indisputable TYT. Always live at this same bat time, same bat place. Super chat. Let's go to YouTube. Talking about Chauvin. Iroquois Pliskin, I think. Thank you for the super chat. I think the cryptic message to the family might be a hint that Chauvin may plead guilty to the federal charges instead of going to trial again. Perhaps, it could be. Bernie, the Kiwi Dragon says, you offer your condolences for things that happen to people. You say you're sorry if you caused it. Exactly. He showed no remorse. He was police. He should have known better. He deserves the maximum. Agreed. Bernie the Kiwi Dragon also said, here to hear the doctor lay down some facts, and you're gonna get that 100%. Gabby Mathis says, I don't trust cops and they will blame trading indeed, get away with it. Maybe I'm missing something, but generally, okay. Training, got it, training and get away with it, right. Kwame Samuels, so a good guy with a gun can still be killed by the cops. Kwame, thank you for saying that, because remember, they said the only way to stop a bad guy with a gun is to have a good guy with a gun. Until another bad guy with a gun shows up with a badge and a gun and kills the good guy with a gun. That's the narrative now. Dragon Slayer, Slayer Dragon, there's no justice until corrective action is taken to ensure law enforcement cannot take another life. If they don't want to be at risk, they shouldn't choose law enforcement. Yeah, it is a dangerous job, but it's not the most dangerous job. The most dangerous job in America is cutting trees. That's per capita. Look it up. David Morris, I really need to thank white people for finally giving a name to the creatures we now know as Karens. They've hounded us for years. There's a lot more. I can't get to all of it. We got a Ken and Karen today, though, on the program, so that should be interesting. Department of Justice, finally, I think Biden is almost getting it. Use every resource you have. The Department of Justice, under the leadership of Merrick Garland, spoke last Friday at a press conference on voting rights. Good. He announced during that presser that there's a federal lawsuit against the state of Georgia. Remember Senate Bill 202, that voter restriction law? That state Senate bill says you can't even bring people a snack or water while they're standing in line. I mean, it makes it a misdemeanor crime. Who needs that to be a misdemeanor? Obviously people that do not want you to have ease in voting. The 46-page federal court filing is the first major action taken by the Biden administration to confront Republican-led efforts to impose voting restrictions. The governor of Georgia, Brian Kemp, responded on Friday via Twitter saying, this lawsuit is born out of the lies and misinformation the Biden administration has pushed against Georgia's Election Integrity Act from the start. Joe Biden, Stacey Abrams, and their allies tried to force an unconstitutional elections power grab through Congress and failed. These guys are good. They're damn good. I mean, literally, the governor of Georgia said that Donald Trump was wrong, that no massive voter fraud took place. The Secretary of State of Georgia, the chief elections officer, Raffensperger, he said on a recorded conversation with then President Trump, no voter fraud took place. Mr. President, your numbers are wrong. And now they're saying, no. Forget about all of that we said back then, you see, because now we have to worry about winning a Republican primary. This is all Stacey Abrams and Congress trying to take away our democracy. They are reforming the message in front of us as we speak. There's another tweet from the good governor. Now they are weaponizing the US Department of Justice to carry out their far left agenda that undermines election integrity and empowers federal government overreach in our democracy. Let's go to the clip.
2 weeks ago, I spoke about our country's history of expanding the right to vote. I noted that our progress on protecting voting rights, especially for Black Americans and people of color, has never been steady. Among other things, I expressed concern about the dramatic rise in state legislative actions that will make it harder for millions of citizens to cast a vote that counts. And I promised that we are scrutinizing new laws that seek to curb voter access, and that where we see violations of federal law, we will act. In keeping that promise, today the Department of Justice is suing the state of Georgia. Our complaint alleges that recent changes to Georgia's election laws were enacted with the purpose of denying or abridging the right of Black Georgians to vote on account of their race or color in violation of Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act.
Sue the hell out of them. And yes, this is the right lawsuit. Remember, they got rid of Sunday voting by saying you can't do Saturday and Sunday voting. You have to do either Saturday or Sunday voting. And then they said, no. We're increasing access because now we're saying that all counties must do one or the other. One before, counties had the decision. They were able to make this decision without a state mandate. And counties that are majority Black counties like DeKalb County, Fulton County, Clayton County, and others in the state of Georgia, they made sure that souls to the polls happened, which increased access. How in the hell can you say no to somebody bringing water, another voter restriction law? And the list goes on and on. Charles, brother, federal lawsuit. They promised this to be the first of many that are coming. I'm glad to see it happening, but still, it's gonna be up to a judge to decide the fate of these laws. What's your legal opinion?
Well, I think in order for us to understand what's going on and what will happen in the courts, we have to go back a little bit, because all of this was set in motion by a Supreme Court case that occurred, I wanna say in 2016, if not earlier, Shelby versus Holder. So it may have been 2006. It hasn't been that long. Oh my gosh.
I think it's been that long, brother.
It has been that long. Shelby versus Holder, and these cases were all put in motion by the Supreme Court's very, very unfortunate decision at that time, which gutted parts of the Voting Rights Act. And I think that in hindsight, that decision has not aged very well, because the reasoning that was offered by Justice Roberts and others at the time was essentially that we were beyond a place in history that mandated the level of oversight and involvement around voter rights and equality, because discrimination and the discrimination that essentially caused these laws to be enacted was a thing of the past. What we are learning, what we are seeing, and what many of us already knew was that nothing could have been further from the truth. And so it will really be, in my opinion, an interesting gateway to see whether there is an opportunity to revisit Shelby on some level, to distinguish themselves from Shelby on other levels in terms of the validity of these laws. The other thing that I want to point out is that Governor Kemp used a very interesting term in weaponizing the Department of Justice. Well, at the end of the day, while not for a political agenda, the Department of Justice is the regulatory weapon of law enforcement for the United States of America to be used essentially by the Attorney General at the behest of the president. Do we want it that way? Do we want it to be that they are the guard dogs? Perhaps not necessarily on paper, but let's face it, this is what we have seen, this is what it has been, and this is what it will be in terms of the FBI as the investigating arm and the DOJ as the enforcement arm, the litigating arm of the United States federal government. And so if it does require us to intervene on behalf of American citizens, then so be it. In terms of calling it weaponizing or whatever you want to label it, I don't necessarily think that that's a bad thing, particularly when it's about equality. The last thing that I want to say is, for as happy as I am to see that there's a strategic method in terms of how they are approaching dealing with this by employing or deploying rather the Department of Justice in the courts, I think that part of what has to happen in the discussion with regards to the rhetoric, with regards to the conversation, with regards to the narrative, we have to be very clear about calling these things for what they are. And that is, I want to be very specific here, white nationalism. I'm talking about white supremacy. I'm not talking about bigotry. I'm not talking about discrimination. I'm not talking about racism in and of itself. These are all tangential and adjacent concepts, but specifically white nationalism, because white nationalism is the concept that the systems, the programs, the benefits of what it is to be American are almost exclusively reserved for white people. And so having access to them, being able to participate in them, and not being a white person is unfathomable to them. And so what we are seeing here is a strong sense of white nationalism, because at the core of our country is our democracy. And at the core of this fight is the ability to participate and access that democracy. And so I think that we have to be very, very ardent in terms of our unwillingness to relent on that narrative and calling it on its face for what it is. And I'd like to see that become part of the dialogue, because at the end of the day, the only way that we are going to combat this strong sense of pushback is to remain vigilant in our truth telling.
Charles, you hit on something so powerful that it is distinguishable. White nationalism is different, and we should be able to have a mainstream conversation about white nationalism. And it seems as if people in executive political authority, they are afraid of that conversation. But think about the irony here, brother. We're having mainstream conversations about damn aliens, and we're still not having mainstream conversations about white nationalism in the United States of America. Very compelling point. Let me shift gears. Ladies and gentlemen, you know what I wish? I wish a Karen would. Okay, there's a Karen and a Ken. I don't know, a Chad, a Kettleman, whatever you want to call them. They called 911 because they were in the parking lot of a Burger King and they missed driving into the drive-thru. So they made an illegal U-turn in the parking lot trying to correct their error. Well, in the midst of them making this illegal turn, another car was perfectly coming in the correct way, and they were able to access the drive-thru. Well, instead of just waiting behind this car and saying, you know what, well, damn, I missed my opportunity here, I would just be second in the line. Instead of doing that, they started to beep their horns and got out of the car and walked in front of the vehicle to block them from proceeding in the Burger King drive-thru. Called 911, and the person or the people inside of the vehicle, God bless them, because they knew this was a Ken and Karen moment, and they were laughing and kind of clowning them the whole time. But imagine the level of privilege that exists to where you can't just say, I can wait in line, I missed it. But no, they had to call the police on this person. Let's go to it. First video.
Lady, are you serious right now? Lady, get out of the way. You are blocking my car. Oh my, are y'all serious right now? If y'all don't get your Karen and Ken ass out the goddamn way, move. Karen and Ken, do you really want a Whopper that bad?
Yeah. I mean, that basically sums it up. Do you really want a Whopper that bad? Or can you not stand the fact that somebody is in front of you because of your own error? And miss me with this, white people are afraid of black people. I have not seen a Ken or Karen yet afraid of one black person. They are confrontational, they are aggressive, they're coming at them with all kind of weapons, including their whiteness. They decided to literally block the vehicle from moving. That's how unafraid they are of the people in the car. Now here's the driver explaining what happened.
This car right here, y'all, decided to make a U-turn in the parking lot. Meanwhile, we were legally going into the drive-thru. She decided she wanted to blow at me because I legally came in the drive-thru, and she got mad because of one car. That's how pressed she is about this damn Whopper. I just came for a large onion ring, okay? This is what we're doing. She is now calling the cops, y'all. Sorry, you're not gonna eat today because they're pressed. This is what we're doing. This is what they're doing. They want all the smoke. Exactly. I will get your ass from in front of my goddamn car. Excuse me. Get your ass out in front of my car. Get out of my way. Move. Move. Get out the way. Get out the way. Here.
She cut me off to get to the takeout to the
Are you drunk?
Burger King.
Because you can't even get your words together.
And almost hit me when I was trying to get in.
I almost hit you.
And cut in front of me. I don't usually get upset, but this is.
Y'all, look how close I am. This is almost hitting them. This is almost hitting them.
The police came, obviously no arrests were made. This is just insanity on top of insanity. But once again, there you have it. Charles?
You know, this ceases to amaze me. And there's a level of entitlement that just defies common sense and any sort of rational thought or thinking. Just the idea that I am going to hold up not only you, but myself
right.
from eating because you should not be able to get in front of me. We talked a bit on the last segment about the notion of weaponizing. And I hate to be too sort of heady about this, but this is what happens when Karens weaponize the police. Mm-hmm. There is an attempt to weaponize the police because there was not a desire or an attempt to involve police for the purpose of mitigating the situation or for the purpose of resolving the situation. Let's be clear about that, because the situation could have been resolved before the police were even called in a number of different ways. But the calling of the police was about sicking the attack dog.
Come on, brother.
On these people who were out of line, literally, in the eyes of these people who were waiting. So let's be clear about that. It wasn't that we need the cops to resolve this. It was the cops work for me and will do as I am expecting them to do as it relates to these people. So when you talk about weaponizing the police, imagine having the mindset that you can call the police even when you're in the wrong in any situation, as small or as minuscule as something like this, and they will essentially do your bidding as a private citizen.
That was the exact thought. Yep, I agree 100% with that. That was the exact mindset. I'm flat out of time, but I got to do this. I have to bring everyone's attention to white Jesus. Pat Robertson. Pat Robertson said something, and he said a lot of ridiculous things, okay? But he said something so extreme about critical race theory. I just have to make sure we put it out on the show today. Let's go to Pat Robertson. Let's go to his comment quickly.
What is it that the people of color have been oppressed by the white people, and the white people begin to be racist by the time they're 2 or 3 months old, and therefore the people of color have to rise up and overtake their oppressors, and then, having gotten the whip handle, if I can use that term, then to instruct their white neighbors how to behave. Now that's critical race theory, and it sets people against one group against another. It is totally divisive, and as has been said, this is the way the communists take over. They try to destroy the children. It is a monstrous evil. And so the white people are supposed to feel guilty, and they're supposed to have white guilt. And the people of color are supposed to cleanse them of that guilt by taking over. It is a monstrous evil.
I'm so glad that Pat Robertson could barely talk, number one. Number two, critical race theory, as he described it, it's completely inaccurate how he described it. I teach critical race theory at the university. It de-emphasizes individuals, and it emphasizes systems. It emphasizes infrastructure, and it emphasizes policies that must be remedied because they produce inequitable outcomes. But that's a whole nother story. I wanted to make sure we put out that Pat Robertson. I got more to say about it later during this week on Indisputable. My brother Charles, thank you so much, man. How can people follow you?
You can find me on Twitter, CF Coleman Jr. You talked about your subscribers getting up. I need my Twitter followers up. So that's why I need people to follow me. Follow me on Twitter, CF Coleman Jr. I'm there. I'm also on Instagram at CFC40_official. But the most active place you will find me is actually on Facebook. You can find me, my verified there is Charles F. Coleman Jr. But Twitter is really where I'm looking for y'all to follow me because I'm looking to engage there more. And you can find me on TYT because this is where I be.
Indisputables, make that happen for my dear brother to get that Twitter account where it should be. Thank you so much, my friend. I appreciate you being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
All right, we got more. Stick and stay.
Came in late to watch TYT Old School, and I hear Cenk Uygur talking about napkins. Is this the kind of nonsense Anna Kasparian was talking about? Gotta love membership privileges. Gotta love them.
Please have Dave on every 4 episodes or so.
Watching Ben Mankiewicz and Cenk Uygur on Old School talking is exactly like watching Seinfeld and George. I'm not sure if that's a compliment.
Who's on Old School today? Is there one? At Dave Kohler. I hope it's not Brett Ehrlich.
This episode of Old School has killed me. Who knew a conversation about good and bad underwear could be so hilarious and relatable?
Couple things about this video. Dave Kohler looks so badass.
There's more than a 73% chance this Old School will be really funny. Cenk Uygur has been up since 4 a.m., so he's tired. Hence, everything will seem funnier to him. P.S. Remember, food talk, new words, and no or very little politics.
Dave Kohler, enjoyed performance on Old School. Can we please hear about your time as a geologist? One geologist to another?
I appreciate that all these people enjoy it because I know Cenk loves to do it, and he does it because he knows the fans love it too.
I'm Nina Turner, and we are on the road to revolution, baby.
Hello, somebody. And I know sometimes people talk about the angry black woman, but I'm gonna tell you something. If you ain't mad as a mofo about what's going on here, something is wrong with you.
People ask me all the time, what are the lessons from 2020? Is that progressives have to get more organized and we got to come together. We have to be as agile as neoliberals. The progressive movement has to understand that it's not just enough for us to have the right ideas. We are right on most of the ideas. We're not perfect, but we're 99% right because it is a humanitarian agenda, but we must get the power. We have to come together in a more unified way so that we utilize our power strategically to topple neoliberalism, and it's gonna happen.
I'll continue to sit. I'm going to continue to stand with the people that are being oppressed.
The president labeled him a son of a bitch.
I don't think it's good to be a distraction to your team.
To stand proudly for the national anthem.
You know, some of these people need to move to another country.
Well, you shouldn't be playing. You shouldn't be there. Maybe you shouldn't be in the country.
The president is put in place to amplify the racists in this country.
Black men and boys are killed at an exponentially higher rate than white men and boys, as outlined by PBS. Black people are most likely to be killed by police, found mappingpoliceviolence.org. Personally, my biggest gripe is not seeing how sports and politics have been attached at the hip. From the jockey syndrome, to the Negro Leagues, to Tommy Smith and John Carlos, Muhammad Ali, to modern day and everything in between. This is not an escape. It is a reflection of reality and a reflection of the times.
A dog on the White House lawn, would that be?
Everything that we've accomplished over the years is because of our members who've allowed us to remain independent of corporate interests and reach 20 million followers. Now is the time to bring as many people into the progressive movement as possible. We're inviting you to be the change and help bring a community-powered progressive change machine to life. Details are at tyt.com/change. If you're a member, thank you. We need you to remain so. If you're one of the thousands of viewers out there who's not a member yet, the time has come for you to join now. We need you more than ever. tyt.com/change.
Welcome back to Indisputable. We got a whole lot. Let me read some of these viewer comments. They're coming in hot and heavy. Don't forget to make sure you always subscribe and tune in on the YouTube page, Indisputable TYT. Make that happen. TYT members, Robin, AKA Beach Dragon, says, Dr. Richie, you make me a smarter person. Thank you for what you do to inform and empower us. It is my pleasure. Thank you for saying so. 1020 Carey says, Kemp is very picky about which elections are stolen. Yeah. Non-human humanist says, and again, it is easier to get a gun than a vote. Our vote's so much more dangerous. YouTube. St. Howard 03 says, would love to see you and Roland Martin tag team in some debates against GOPers. Yeah, Roland Martin is my homie, by the way. Yarmish Potter says, it's a shame when you have to suppress the vote to win. Remember, I said this to you before. We are moving in an era where voters are not picking the politicians, but the politicians are not picking the voters. Let's see what else we got. Abon Dragon says, man, every time I listen to this show, I feel a little bit smarter. Thank you. Okay, all right, we got a lot of comments, but I also have a lot of show left, so I apologize, I can't get to everybody. Ladies and gentlemen, I have on the show Chuck Rocha, who is author of Tío Bernie. Tío means in Spanish means uncle. The inside story of how Bernie Sanders brought Latinos into the political revolution. He's also former senior advisor to Bernie Sanders for president 2020 and 2016. And Chuck got a lot to say. Chuck, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you, brother. Nice to be here.
Let's first talk about the progressive movement and what Bernie Sanders did to American politics. You were there front and center. Give us some background to that.
I think what Bernie did is he proved what was possible. He proved that an AOC could happen. He proved that a lot of these progressive Congress folks can happen. He proved what could happen when you have grassroots organizing and grassroots fundraising. He fundamentally, with the campaign and the team, and I give a shout out to all of the hardworking volunteers who were the backbone of that campaign, the real difference in what we see in American politics. Look, I am no youngster when it comes to campaigns. I've been doing this for 31 years. And money has always been the mother's milk of all campaigns, no matter what kind of campaign you get. And I tell people this every day. There's a lot of great people who want to run for office, but they never can raise enough money to go tell enough people what they stand for to get them to vote for them. Bernie Sanders created a grassroots fundraising model that changed politics. Folks will talk about the grassroots this and the door knocks. All that's important. But if he hadn't raised enough money to tell enough people who Bernie Sanders was in 2016, none of these other things would have ever happened.
Yeah, I say this often, man, to my college students. Messaging is free. Distributing the message costs money, no matter what you do. So I'm glad to hear you talk about that and put it in proper context, because Bernie Sanders, he got people invested. So while some of these other candidates during that era, they had a lot of money, Bernie Sanders really got smaller contributions from a lot of people who were simply believers in the campaign and believers in the movement. Let's talk about the Black and Brown coalition, specifically how the Bernie Sanders campaign really ignited that kind of coalition building inside of the Democratic Party.
Look, what we did inside the campaign in 2020 was learn from the mistakes, and I openly talk about this, that we had made in 2016, and started the campaign leaning into race and leaning into diversity. And what I like to talk about is the equity piece of diversity, and making sure that there was teams in the states that looked like the people that we wanted to talk to. In South Carolina, a state we did not win, it was 80% African American, 90% from South Carolina, led by a strong Black woman. Like, this is what we had heard the people talk about in 2016, and we lived our values in 2020 because we had more time to build that out. And with the Latino outreach operation, I was honored to sit at the helm of that as a senior director and making sure that that was implemented in the right way. But we had lots of Latinos on staff. We started talking, I write about this in the book, talking to people of color 6, 8, 9 months in advance. We had budget authority to make sure that there would be budget spent in these areas and in these communities early, and it never got cut. This is the formula for all Democrats to use, which is the whole reason I open sourced a book called T.O. Bernie, to say if we can do this for Bernie Sanders, a white man, progressive from Vermont, think what we can do for Mrs. Jackson running for the Wisconsin Senate. Think what we can do for Mr. Hernandez running in city council in Austin. Think about folks who would actually be from our community, talking to our community. So I wanted to lay out the outline for everyone to be able to use.
Very well said, and a remarkable strategy, remarkable execution of that strategy as well. I don't have a lot of time, only got a couple of minutes, but I want to ask you about the voter restriction laws. You know that the Department of Justice recently announced a lawsuit against the state of Georgia. But truthfully, all of the Republican states, all of them, passed some level of voter restriction after Donald Trump lost the presidential election. What are your thoughts about voter restriction laws, and how do we strategize to overcome what the laws intend to do?
The electorate has changed since 31 years ago when I started running campaigns for Ann Richards back in the great state of Texas. The population has changed. Folks are multicultural, multi-generational households. The average school-age public school student in Texas is a person of color. So when you have less than 30% of your school children that are white, and you have 98% of all the elected Republican officials in Texas being white and predominantly white men, they see a demographic changing around them. And instead of trying to go speak to them and get them to vote for them, they are now trying to encourage them not to vote by making it more restrictive. And this is anti-democratic, and I think it will come back to bite them in these elections, because what I'm hearing in all of the focus groups is that people are ready for change, and they want to make sure that their voice is heard in their government.
Don't you think on the strategy level, and I think you kind of hinted to it just then, that we can actually utilize this level of restriction and these egregious actions being done by statute and legislation to motivate the base to say, look at what they are trying to do to your vote? Utilize that as motivational capital to bring more masses out to participate, to not only protect their right, but protect the right of their children and their children's children.
But Dr. Ritchie, what we have to do with what we're doing with messaging, to your point about spending a little money, is go into those communities and talk about what this restriction means to them. A lot of times folks like me and you are trying to get it out here on the media, but you don't see the politicians sending a mail piece, a digital ad, or a phone call talking about what this restriction means to your grandmother who doesn't drive anymore, who had to give up her driver's license, who you have to take to the grocery store. How's she gonna be able to show her ID when she don't even really have an ID anymore other than an old Social Security card? What is the real impact? We need more politicians talking and paying communication into those communities to make sure they understand what's at risk, because there's a lot of good people going back to our elders who fought and died for this right, that we need to remind these young folks about why it is so important that we fight for this value every day.
You're telling Democrats put their money where their mouth is?
That's
because
what
if
I'm
you're saying that this is a fundamental destructive element of democracy, that means that a whole lot of your money needs to be spent on making sure this does not happen to this democracy. Brother, I appreciate you and thank you for all that you continue to do for the movement to right. And I mean righteousness when I say right. How can people check out your book?
Go to toburneybook.com or you can go to solidaritystrategies.com. Thank you, Dr. Ritchie.
Chuck, it's a pleasure, brother. Thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, stick and stay. I got the bullpen coming.
So a lot of progressive office holders are doing something fun. I like fun. They're doing the last 2 years in 2 minutes. Okay, we're gonna try it here. First, I wanna let you guys know about the years before that. Hey, remember we started the Just Democrats here on the Young Turks. It was officially launched on our air, basically by you guys. And then we featured AOC, we featured Cori Bush, and Rocha became the first ever Just Democrat incumbent, all on the Young Turks. Now, the last 2 years have been a spectacular follow-up to that. So let's put the 2 minutes on the clock and do this. Young Turks got to start back in 2002, and I think we've been an important part of the progressive movement ever since. What we mainly do is amplify the progressive voice and candidates out there, and I think we've done a pretty good job. Right now, we're currently #1 most engaged news politics network online, beating CNN, Fox News, and MSNBC, all of them. We're #1 in total minutes watched. That means not only the number of people watching, but how long they watch. We just crossed 20 million followers and 500 million monthly views. Now, why? That's because actually the country's progressive. It's 2/3 progressive. And you guys have allowed us to be your voice, and we're incredibly thankful for that. So what did we do with that voice? Well, let's look at 2019. We went all over the country talking to you guys and the candidates. So we were in Miami, we were in Detroit, we were in Houston, and we were in Iowa. In fact, we were all over Iowa. You guys were all over Iowa, and all of the candidates saw you guys. We had wonderful people speaking, like the one and only Nina Turner at our rallies. Bernie Sanders stopped by, Andrew Yang, Elizabeth Warren. We interviewed almost everyone on the campaign trail, with the exception of Biden and Buttigieg. And we held them accountable. We even did a progressive economic pledge, and so many wonderful people signed on to that. Bernie Sanders, Warren, Marianne Williamson, AOC, the entire squad, Justice Democrats, and so many others. Now, on top of all that, we started a show called The Conversation, where we featured so many progressive thinkers, writers, and candidates. And one of the candidates we featured in 2019 was Jamal Bowman. Here comes Jamal Bowman. Then we had an amazing 2020. We hired a climate reporter. Damage Report passed 500,000 subscribers. Young Turks passed 5 million subscribers. We're getting the message out to more and more people. Bernie Sanders comes on in the heat of the primary. He comes on after the election to say what we're gonna do for the future. And then Marie Newman wins. Jamal Bowman wins. Cori Bush wins. And then just when you thought it couldn't get any better, here comes Nina Turner. Hello, somebody. And she's running for Congress, and she comes on the Young Turks first. On election week, we had nearly 2 million hours of viewing. We're #1 destination for progressives. You made all that happen. This is amazing, and thank you for those 2 years. What, I went past 2 minutes? Of course!
Viewers had asked for an interview with the TYT Lizard. Mr. Lizard. Oh, you changed colors today. Nice. I don't even know how you feel about us. Do you even like us?
Well, you guys made me this awesome house, so I'm kind of in your debt. I was found outside on the street, and you gave me a home. Granted, it was a really crappy home for a while, but then through the power of fundraising, I became a person who has a multi-level Trump-style mansion.
You do. By the way, you've never looked better, man. Normally, you're just green or just brown, but today you're in mid-lizard, right?
You know, I'm not very smart. I'm a lizard, so I don't know how the science works. I guess this is just my mood. It's not every day that thresholds like this are broken. I'm just so excited. I can't contain my pigmentation.
And now you're showing it off.
Yep.
Yeah, I've never seen the lizard like this before.
Welcome back to Indisputable. Let's go to some of these viewer comments. All right, we got a lot of them. I can't read all of them, but I will get to as many as I can. TYT members, Frost Banana says the bullpen is triggering. I agree, but the doctor's takes on these issues is beyond expectation. He's a pearl. Well, thank you. High compliment there. He shows us where to lead. Dragging the line. Dr. Ritchie, not only are your arguments spot on, and not only is your passion so relatable, your sense of style is just chef's kiss. I am especially enamored by your necktie collection. Just had to say so. Well, thank you. I do try. I appreciate that. Thanks for noticing. Nagon 11. Voter suppression has been the order of the day since the black man got the vote. Yeah. Twitter. Reminder, always hashtag Indisputable TYT, by the way, on Twitter, all social media. And follow us at Indisputable TYT, and we can read those comments on air. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Bullpen. In the Bullpen today, I have Major Williams. Major Williams is a gubernatorial candidate for California, the recall election. A lot of news, a lot of hype around this election. Major, welcome to Indisputable.
Absolutely, thank you so much for having me on.
Absolutely, let me first start the conversation because this is under your frequently asked questions. You're not actually a high-ranking military official. You changed your name from Courtney to Major, correct?
Absolutely, but I've gone by Major Williams for the last 20 years as a nickname. But when I ran for mayor in 2018, obviously I wanted my name on the ballot to reflect the name that everyone knew me as, which is Major Williams.
Got it. Let's talk about critical race theory. I don't want to presume your point of view of CRT. I know that was one of the subjects you were willing to converse about today. What's your thoughts about CRT, critical race theory?
Well, I feel like it should be an open conversation on either side to truly understand what those elements are. Me, from a leadership perspective, I believe in having dual perspective, meaning that I'm open to other opinions and ideals. And if you're able to convince me if it's a good or a bad thing, I'm all open for that as well. But at this point right now, it's not something that I truly support in regards to the mechanisms and the elements. And it reminds me simply because it reminds me of back in the day, if you remember Ruby Bridges, there was a scenario that I read about, a story that she shared about, being identified with certain triggers. You don't know that there is a problem unless you bring it up. And I think if you do that to kids being so impressionable, that changes the dynamics of their youthful experience in life.
Now, you talked about kids. You do know that critical race theory is not taught to kids. It's not taught in K through 12 education. It is an advanced theoretical framework that's usually taught in advanced level collegiate studies, master's and doctoral programs. So when you say it should not be taught to kids, it's been around since the 60s and it has never been taught to children. So explain where you think that came from. Why do people continue to say that we should not teach it to kids when we don't teach any advanced theoretical framework, including critical theory or critical race theory, to children?
Right, I believe you understand when it comes to the label of it, and also what the teachers are actually teaching the kids. So mind you, on the curriculum, it may not say critical race theory, but the mechanisms and the proponents that they're using to indoctrinate the kids in the education or the teachings has those elements. So yes, you may be right in regards to it's only for advanced educational, placement or whatnot, but those elements do exist today in the educational system, and that's something that a lot of parents, including myself, if that's the case, are going to push back on without a doubt.
Can you describe to me or explain the teaching of critical race theory? What does it say?
Well, I believe from an example standpoint, because this is something that, as you mentioned, it has been around for a very long time, but more specifically, it's been highlighted for a lot of people based upon the actual name of it. So that's gotten a lot of people in an uproar. But for me, it's more so about the mechanism of it. And that's why I use the example. From young impressionable kids, I believe as leaders, meaning the teachers, if you're cementing a thought process to a kid versus building them up and empowering them, telling them that they can't do certain things based upon their color, based upon their race, or based upon their background, that psychologically affects kids. And I'm all about empowering youth and kids.
Yeah, so Major Williams, come on, brother. You did that politician thing. You did not answer my question. You spoke for a while, but you did not answer the question. The question is direct. What is critical race theory? I don't want to know about your thoughts and feelings. Critical race theory actually has a defined core. This is what it is. It's like saying, if I point to a piece of fruit and it's an apple, and I say, what is that piece of fruit? You say, well, that's an apple, right? There's an actual definition here. So what is critical race theory? How can you be critical of something you don't know anything about? So I'm asking, what is critical race theory?
So as I said earlier, for me, it's not a concrete criticism, which is why I, as a leader, I'm doing the work. We're putting together an amazing task force for individuals who actually believe critical race theory is a good thing. Also individuals who don't believe in it, so I can also get a better understanding as well. I don't sit in front of any camera and profess like I know all things. I can share my opinion based upon what I've received thus far. But from a leadership perspective, it's time. It's one of those things where I want to get to the table and understand it better for everyone else, so I can understand the mechanism of it moving forward.
Well, brother, let me take this opportunity to provide an education for you. Critical race theory, as I said, it's an advanced theoretical framework. It comes out of the legal scholarship studies, which basically says that the way policies, statutes were written, it actually created by design inequitable outcomes where people of color were not as supported in the ecosystem of criminal justice, in civil justice, or even in institutional norms as their white counterparts in the United States of America. You don't have to go any further than the US Constitution, that document said that you and I were 3/5 of a person. Well, that's considered to be an inequitable issue that has to be remedied. You have to remedy that not by saying white people can't be racist or shouldn't be racist. You have to provide remedy for that based on a policy. Also, the Declaration of Independence called Native Americans savages. That is the language of the Declaration of Independence. You cannot remedy that by simply saying, well, white people should no longer be racist, or we have to forget about the racist past. You have to remedy that once again by providing a policy or an amendment to make the remedy there. Keep in mind, critical race theory actually de-emphasizes the individual racist and said your problem is not really with individual racist people. Your problem is in a structure or design that has these implicit and sometimes aggressive biases written within. And because of those biases, we have to do an analytical review of what these biases have done to the expression of our societal norm. That's all critical race theory does. It does not give you an answer or a conclusion. It provides a framework, brother, for a question to be posed.
The thing about a framework, whether you agree or not, it can be misinterpreted or manipulated as well, like all things. So I just want to make sure that individuals and leaders that are creating this framework, that are a part of sharing this framework, are not manipulating the basis.
Man, come on, Major. Major, why do you think it's been around since the 60s and it only became the great evil? You got Pat Robertson and other people saying that it's the great evil. It's been around since the 60s. It has never been taught in K through 12 education. There are plenty of people that have studied this as one of the theories of how race and racism can be examined in America. Why do you think it only became a great evil in America when Donald Trump said it wasn't evil? That's the only time it became this bright, shiny thing for Republicans to talk against. Tell me why.
Well, I believe that people have been talking about it. You know, we're at the height of social media at this point. So of course, everything's gonna be polarized, especially if the former president of the United States talks about it.
So you do agree he polarized it?
Huh?
You do agree he's the guy that polarized it, correct?
Say that, I've never heard him mention it.
You've never heard President Donald Trump, the former president, mention critical race theory?
No, I haven't.
All right, well, let me educate you again. When he was president of the United States, he talked about critical race theory being anti-American. He also provided a policy through executive action that said if your diversity inclusion training of any federal department includes the teaching of critical race theory, you will no longer be funded by the federal government. So he's the guy who started this attack. Brother, I need you to know the origin of where it came from, because you have to at least question, if this has been around since the 60s, why all of a sudden are we talking about it today? You see, you still
saying something that's been around since the 60s, that doesn't automatically make it something that was appeasing or appealing to Americans.
But brother, why is it a great evil today, according to conservatives?
I'm willing to have those conversations, and like I said, I'm not a typical politician. I'm a hybrid. I'm new in this space to a certain degree, but and I don't dance. And if I don't know something, I don't know something. And I receive the opportunity to be educated, so to speak, or to learn new things, so I can actually expand my mindset in regards to that. But like I said, I've never heard him specify that in that way, ever.
Well, you need to do your research, brother, because he absolutely did, and even provided a policy directive inside of his bias against it. So do that research. You do agree that systemic racism does exist, or do you disagree that it exists?
I believe racism is a key component and key element in our country, and I think across the entire world.
So, well, answer this yes or no, because I don't want to presume that you said yes or no to that. Does systemic racism exist?
No.
Systemic racism does not exist, but racism exists. That's your answer.
Absolutely.
Okay. So let me try to.
So give me your definition of systemic racism versus racism, but also understanding that racism has been hugely overused, through everything. It could be, I just don't like you as well. So we need to break down what that truly means in prison.
I can do that for you. Systemic racism is when you look at your FBI.gov report that shows routinely blacks are more likely to get pulled over without any prerequisite criminal activity 3 to 5 times more than a white driver, and whites are as likely, if not more likely, in some regions like New York and even LA, also in San Francisco. Whites are more likely to actually have drug paraphernalia or something illegal inside of their vehicle. So that's part of a systemic racism issue. Not only is the outcome unequal, but also before the outcome happens, the stop itself is unequal. There's another expression of this as well. When you have a racist police officer, that police officer typically does not exist in a silo. Here's my point to that. A racist cop, people know who that racist cop is. How can the racist cop exist in an ecosystem of justice without being called out before there's an expression of violent racism?
Racist cops exist. How are you figuring out that they determine that or know that factually? Is it a bad behavior from the officer? Is he showing certain bias? Is it as an attitude? Like, how is it?
Okay, I can give you some background to that. Fair question. Yeah, very fair question. Typically, in the course of the investigation, we've had that with a deputy sheriff here in Georgia. You've had this with other police officers who have been called out for racism. Once there's an analysis of their text messages, they utilize the N-word on a regular basis. You will find that there is a culture of white supremacy by their tattoos and what they subscribe to on social media. So these are very common elements of policing or police officers who are racist. They typically are not racist in a silo. They have a culture of racism that is exposed once an investigation happens. So that's where I'm getting it from.
Okay. Okay. I mean, if it's something that's verifiable, as you said, text messages and white supremacy tattoos or whatever, I'm about fairness, man. I believe in accountability, but I do support law enforcement 100%, but I do not support bad cops, and I will speak out against them at any given moment if that's the case.
Man, I'm glad you say you do not support bad cops, but you do support policing. So roughly 95% of Americans are for police reform. 58% of Americans, they say police reform must be dramatic. Even 51% of Republicans support some level of police reform. Now, why do you think it has been so difficult to get a real police reform bill passed by Republicans and Democrats when the public sentiment is there to do it?
I believe it comes down to ideology and the road to actually get there. There's a lot of different moving parts because when you're making policy that's blanketed across the entire country, the dynamics is different per county, per city, or whatever. So if you put together a one-size-fits-all policy, then it actually can prove more detrimental than helpful. The fact that individuals are saying now defund the police department when we should be doing reform and more training, which requires more funding for those police departments as well. So the dynamics is a little different. And like I said, ideology-wise, I don't think they're connected, which is why policy can't come to the table and get pushed forward on that matter. But hopefully that's going to happen because, as you said, the people are speaking and supportive of it.
Well, let's talk about policy. First of all policy is uniform. All policy is one size fits all. Murder, federal murder is federal murder, no matter who does it or what state you do it in. So all policy.
Share with you a little context on why the cutting of the head is happening when it comes to actually getting it pushed through, regardless if it's uniform. Okay. It's a little challenging because you do have a two-party system that's butting heads, and you oftentimes they don't want to apply a policy or push it through unless they get something else, catered to them as well. So
yeah, and that's the game of politics, man. I don't like that part, Major. I don't think you like that part either, by the way. I think you would like to see pure bills be presented in good faith, and you fight on that bill, not the trickery behind it, right?
Absolutely, 100%.
Let's also talk about defund the police. I actually support the defund the police movement because I understand what the movement means. Defund the police means to reprioritize policing budgets, to reimagine what policing is. So let's talk about this in the context of what police agencies actually do. I'm gonna bring you to a place called Ithaca, New York. And when you get a moment, I want you to research Ithaca, New York. Ithaca, New York did not have to wait on the George Floyd murder. Ithaca, New York did not have to wait on a Sandra Bland or Breonna Taylor. Ithaca, New York, they did a survey. That's all they did. They did a survey and they found that 51% of their 911 calls did not actually need a police officer. They needed a social worker or some type of community liaison. That's what was required. Obviously, cops are not trained as social workers or community liaisons, right? And so what did they do? They responded to the data of their local government, of their local citizens. They decided to start hiring one social worker per every 2 police officers who either retired, transferred, or have been dismissed. So their numbers, their goal is to make a congruency between the need of that local community and what is actually offered. I think that's a good thing. Let's talk about defunding the police. Budgets, brother. That's what this is about. Now, if your city or county is saying, and Major, I want you to respond to this. If your city or county says, we hire more cops, we're now spending more money than ever before, that means your city or your county has failed you, brother, because they are admitting they have no idea how to resolve the elements of criminality that lead to this in the first place. For example, drug addiction, alcohol addiction, crimes of survival, crimes of poverty or out of poverty, mental health disorders. That's 88% right there, brother. 88% of your crimes are connected to one or multiple of the things I just described to you. So if your city is not reprioritizing their budget to say, let's figure out a way to address some of these underlying issues of criminality, then your city is failing you. When have you known a city, name one city that has arrested themselves out of socioeconomic dysfunction? Chicago has more cops than ever before, and they are spending more money on policing than ever before, and the crime rate is soaring more than ever before. So you have examples of where it's not working, brother.
I believe that's a great, unique, that's a unique situation when you bring up Chicago. I want to take it back to what you said earlier about the survey that was conducted versus, the citizens saying that social workers would probably be more necessary versus officers. Well, you also have to understand that the psychological proponent and also mainstream media in regards to how they have changed the narrative in regards to what police officers represent as well. So if you conduct a survey and you ask individuals about police service versus social workers, they've been tainted so horribly. You have to agree with me and say that a percentage of that is kind of swayed, so to speak.
No, sir. Major, I have to disagree. Let me opine.
Of the actual people, because they've been led to believe that police officers are not there.
No, sir, you're incorrect.
Good.
Let me opine on that. And this is why I encourage you to do the research. When I say survey, I'm referencing a survey of the actual 911 calls from citizens of Ithaca, New York. Meaning they surveyed the 911 calls and said, well, damn, roughly 50% of our citizens didn't even need a police officer. This wasn't a robocall, brother. This wasn't something in the mail that said check 1 or 2. This was actual data that can be actionable.
I understand the foundation of Ithaca as well. And what you said, Ithaca, New York as well, because there could be bias there as well. So I can't like openly receive that. I hear you. I'm going to do my additional research on it as well. But I will say foundationally that there has been some bias that's been put out there, whether it be through the community and their interactions, but also through mainstream media, social media as well. It's not as broad as some may think, but it is an issue. We agree that there needs to be reform. We agree there needs to be training as well. And the captains and the police officers that I've talked to, they share the same sentiments. They want to get better. They want to improve. But it's a complex situation, and we have to find a way to bridge that gap, to move forward.
You're an entrepreneur. You've held multiple professional positions. In almost every profession, there's a level of self-critique and self-analysis that must take place in order for that profession to continue to grow and adapt to the changing world. Policing, however, let me give you another stat. Policing, they solve about 2% of major crimes. A new stat came out just a few months ago. 11% in the best jurisdiction. So you have an effective rate for policing of 2 to 11%. What other government agency, and I say government agency intentionally because that means they are accountable to my money. What other government agency can express a 2 to 11% effectiveness rate and nobody get to question them?
You know what I would ask you also, there should be a survey in regards to police officers' presence being a deterrent for people as well. So I'm sure there would be a high percentage when it comes to the presence of police officers in communities at events to be a deterrent for individuals to carry out criminal acts as well. So there's so many psychological twists and turns when it comes to this, and I get some of what you're saying, but there's so much more, so many more layers that should be acknowledged when it comes to us attacking this issue and addressing it as such.
All right, I only have about 1 minute left, brother. Tell me what you think should happen to reform the police.
I think strong communication, more funding and better training, but also the input of the actual communities that they're policing. And I think it should be a broad push for the police department to push for individuals in those communities to sign up for the police academy as well.
Okay.
That'll change some of the dynamics.
How about mandated cameras, body cameras for all cops?
I support that.
Okay. How about if a cop does anything to manipulate that data on the body camera, they can be charged with a felony for tampering with evidence?
Oh, that happens in real life, so they should be held accountable.
Good stuff. And how about keeping a database of police officers that are bad actors so that we can be aware of who they are?
I believe that already exists.
That does not exist.
It doesn't?
No, sir.
Okay, that's something that can be explored. I definitely want to protect their privacy as well. I don't want their families to be attacked, so I do.
Well, they know my record. They know your record. Why can't we know their record, brother?
No, I get it. I get
it. All right. My man, listen, it's been a pleasure. Major Williams, gubernatorial candidate, Republican. I appreciate you being on Indisputable in the bullpen.
Absolutely, thank you so much. God bless you.
Bless you, man. All right, ladies and gentlemen, remember this. Take care of yourself, take care of each other, and take care of the planet. And remember, the truth is always indisputable.